wasn't?
No. I think you sent it to us separately, but it was not linked on there.
That's right, okay.
So
Yeah, that's my fault, I'm sorry about
it's
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Will we be able to pull it up in here so we can look at it because
Yeah, yeah.
I had it credited.
Sure.
No, it's here. The sheriff is here. Did you see it? I just. Well, is it? Oh, maybe Amanda, now it's linked, James said. Like, you know how it was on our reports as like a separate link for just the month?
Yeah.
Now it's a link that takes us to all of the months.
On the agenda?
We'll have him present it tonight. I think I'll ask him, Amanda, I think I'll ask him to present it because it looks really different than what we've been getting. Is that okay?
Yes, it does look very different,
Okay,
yeah.
so you can pull that up and have him.
Yeah, let me get him a link and I can, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Right around this corner, is there one right there? I could print more if they're gone. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, it's time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna
it's
tell him
okay.
where that is.
I was just gonna start on these, but okay, it's okay. All right, welcome everybody. I would like to call the August meeting of the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission meeting to order. Number 2 on our agenda is roll call. Amanda, can I please have a roll call?
Yes. Chair June Hansberger,
Present?
Vice Chair Patricia Trouth, absent. James Gross,
Here.
Glenn Johnson,
Present.
Harold Standerfer,
Present.
David Thiele,
Here.
and Jim Wang. Jim
Here.
Wang. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, I would ask if everybody would like to please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everybody. Number 4 on our agenda is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Perfect. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. I guess all in favor, let's just do a voice vote on this one.
Aye.
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 Okay, perfect. Thank you. Number 5 on our agenda is oral communication. This is the opportunity for the public to come up and address any issues that they have with us that are not on our agenda items. There's a 3-minute time limit, and just so the public is aware, we cannot engage in dialogue with the public speakers on the issues they bring to the commission because they are not on our published agenda. However, we are listening, and we can address the issues at the end of the meeting during Commissioner Corner on any item that is discussed tonight. So with that, do we have any speakers, Amanda?
Yes, we do.
We have 3 speakers tonight. First is Ron Dashwood, followed by Logan Brown.
Hello, how are you? Hope it's okay. I keep the hat on. My wife says I look friendlier when I have a hat on, so I'm keeping it on. I shared a story with Judy Brofine earlier today, and she asked that I share it with all of you because there's, I believe, an agenda item later about traffic safety for bicycles at intersections. And I had a really close call a couple weeks ago. I was about this close to not being here today. And I was doing everything right. I was at the intersection of Vulcan and Encinitas Boulevard, going northbound. Waiting for the light. I was going to go straight. So I was on the strip between the turn lane and the going straight lane. And there were about 7 cars waiting to go straight. The turn lane was empty. Light turned green. An electric car, I'm not going to say the brand because that's not what it's about. I couldn't hear them because they were an electric car, decided that they didn't have the patience to wait to go straight behind the cars that were waiting to go straight. They went through the right turn lane, past me, about 30 miles an hour, and then changed lanes in the intersection to go straight. So it was a very scary moment. I guess, yeah, so I guess you can't ask questions or anything like that, so that's what I have to share. So hopefully we can do something to improve that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Hi, I'm Logan Brown. I was brought here by Judy as well to share my story with traffic safety for e-biking. This happens a lot, but, just the other day, you know how cars are allowed to turn when the light is red, but that's also where the bike lane is for bikes to wait to go straight. So I was waiting there, and I had a couple cars behind me as well waiting to turn. But, the one person behind me just was not having it and was absolutely rude. They lay their horn on me, they just flip me off, do whatever they can to get me out of the way they think they can do. And I just hope that we can find another way to make that more safe and have everyone feel like they are allowed to share the road with cars, because we are just as important as everyone else in the cars. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story tonight.
Final speaker for oral communications is Christine Schindler.
Hi there, Christine Schindler. I live in East Encinitas, and I just wanted to come tonight and say how happy I am that we have a new position, a mobility manager, and they have hired someone internally from Parks and Rec, Nick Bach, and I'm very excited. He's going to hit the ground running. He's got a lot of good experience, and I think it's a new role that's going to be very important, working between planning, engineering, Parks and Rec, schools, community, advocacy groups, and beyond. And so I just wanted to congratulate Nick and bring it to your attention if you didn't already know this. Thank you for your service as well, and I appreciate the sheriffs being here and the update that they're going to provide as well. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that information with the commission. Okay, I think that that is the end of oral communications.
Sorry to interrupt. We have one more.
Okay,
You able to put a thumb drive? Well, thanks. My name
sir-
is Dennis Caden.
sir, sometimes it's best if you could email those. I think they ask 24 hours before the meeting. So I know it's not always easy, but that will definitely ensure us being able to see your presentation.
Okay,
Okay,
super
thank
good.
you.
So,
Excuse me, if you have it on paper, I should be able to put it on the screen if you have it on paper.
can I,
Do you have a copy for yourself?
no, I can,
Yeah, I should be able to.
that'd be wonderful.
I will, sure.
Just let me know when you want me to go to the
Good,
next.
okay. So I'm here to ask, there's a project on Piraeus Street that's proposed, and it's an R30. They're asking for the city to either give them or sell them, but vacate the right-of-way. And we're asking you because this is the business you guys do best, to make a recommendation not to vacate the property. You've done a lot of work designating Piraeus as a suburban collector. That would all go down the drain. Next slide, please, thanks. So the city vacated Orpheus, the corner at Orpheus and Leucadia Boulevard. It's the Starbucks location. I can't tell you how many times probably the city wished they did not do that, because they could have used it to widen Orpheus. Right now, especially during the non-school years, months rather, the traffic, people trying to get into the Starbucks is backed up so far that it actually blocks even the exiting people on I-5 trying to get to Leucadia Boulevard. So, it was afterthought, but bad move. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now the city is asking to vacate Piraeus and Plato, which right now could make sense, but in the future, as soon as the R30 development is built, there'll be increased traffic, a lot of issues, and I'll get into them. So there are 3 parcels, one parcel which would be developed on, the other ones are mitigating properties, but the white line alongside, well, the curved white line, that is the property, and then from there to Piraeus Street is the right-of-way. It's almost a full acre of property they're asking for. Next slide, please. So right-of-ways, what do they do best? They create a buffer between development and whatever we need to do, or just keep everything safe. At the bottom of Plato, where it meets Piraeus, that property, the right-of-way could be used to widen so you have a separate right-hand turn lane instead of traffic backing up. Not only, and with the recent, the Capri School is right around the corner. If there was a fire, and like they had in Lahaina, everybody's going in every different direction, you would have backups. We have backups now, people trying to go left or go south on Piraeus, because that's the only way out of our neighborhood getting to Leucadia Boulevard. By the way, Piraeus no longer has access to Leucadia Boulevard. It is blocked, so we have to go through narrow private neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So you could widen also Piraeus at La Costa. So those 2 white lines are just to widen it enough so that you also don't have backups, and you have a, wow, that went fast. Go ahead and do the next one. Okay, you could have 2 westbound lanes, because the light sequencing is terrible there. It backs up all the time getting to La Costa Avenue. Next slide. And then your suburban collector is a 50-foot width minimum, up to 75. Next one, please. Thank you. And next one, please. If they vacate, you would not even get what you consider a residential neighbor way. Next slide. And you gotta remember our trail, so there's a lot, next slide, you can go to. Next one, thank you. The path is supposed to be 4 to 6 feet wide besides the trail, you know, the room for the trail. Next one, please. The line goes red all the way up from Leucadia Boulevard to La Costa Avenue is where the trail goes. There'd be no room for that whatsoever. Next slide, please.
Okay, and I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up here
Okay.
quickly.
I am done. Thank you. So we recommend they do not vacate the right-of-way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing the information. Okay, any more speakers? Okay, great. So I think we're on to number 6, which is special presentation and proclamation. And our next one is the sheriff's report. So I think we have Traffic Sergeant Jeremy Collis from the Sheriff's Department. Are you here tonight?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, great, thank you. And I think, I was hoping that maybe you could update us on this new presentation because it's a completely different format than we've seen before, and it's much appreciated, but I was hoping you could walk the commissioners and myself through this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, to be honest, I wasn't prepared to do this. I just know that basically I can talk more about our.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
It's all
I
right.
apologize.
I didn't realize this was going to happen. I can certainly talk about our new stats.
Thank you.
And we can scroll all the way down.
All the way down,
Yep, actually, just past it. There you go.
this one?
So basically, our analyst every month provides a package of statistics to the city based on all our crime stats, vehicles, traffic enforcement, and all that. And so recently, he put it into a nice package to essentially send over to the city because he was being inundated with requests from all sorts of all parts of the city of Encinitas for all different types of stats. So what he did was he put it all together in one nice, neat package and just sends that out once a month. One of the problems with what we have with the dates of this particular commission is the statistics aren't able to be together for the previous month until just after it probably will be done this week. So we'll be essentially a month behind until something changes. But so we'll be 1 month behind and with all of our stats. And yeah, so it's a nice, neat package. With the next slide shows where all the collisions take place. And that's essentially it as far as that goes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any commissioners have questions or comments? Commissioner?
Yes, in June, I understand there was a fatality accident involving an e-bike and a vehicle on El Camino Real. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Is there a sheriff's report on that?
No, the investigation is not done.
Is there an estimate of when it might be done?
We're actually waiting for some outside agency specific items. I can't really tell you. I don't want to speculate. It should be soon. But with that, then there's litigation, potentially. There's making sure family has the information and all that. So I can't tell you when that would be made completely public.
When that's done, that will be public?
It will be public, yes.
Can I ask that a copy of it be submitted to this commission?
I'll have to ask. There's some laws governing that kind of thing. It might have to be done through a records request, through our records division. But I'll ask, though, for sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gross?
Sergeant Collis, any identified suspects in the January hit and run?
There's not. We've been in close touch with that family, and there's not. Unfortunately, we did all sorts of electronic warrants to find. There's all sorts of. We really used every possible source we could. There's all sorts of new warrants out there for electronics and all that. We use those, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to to find any suspects. We had a lot of leads actually, but nothing panned out, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. One other question. So this new report, it's actually great in that we requested historical data. I think we'll now get it within the website. It's unfortunate that we're now missing, we're basically going to be behind a month, as you mentioned, from when we meet. Is there any opportunity, I guess the request would be to the analysts, but basically if there's any way to get this data in any sort of SQL-like format, something where we could actually just pull the data down and use it, much like we use TIMS or another open source database. That would just be a request that I'd have in order to extrapolate data. Then we can do trends and things like that, month over month, year over year.
Sure, I'll ask the question.
Thank you.
It's all above my level of intellect.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Wong?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sheriff, and your department for all the hard work you do in collecting statistics. So this kind of relates to our future item 7C, which is on bicycle safety. I was wondering if you have statistics on bicycle accidents, because of course, as you know, it'd be better to target the most hazardous areas.
Sure. So there, I don't have, do we have? I don't have any specific numbers right now on bike accidents, although it is a downward trend right now for the last few months since we've started doing our new enforcement and educating folks. So it is a downward trend. One thing to talk about that we're doing for the essentially mostly for juveniles is when we cite a juvenile currently, there's a few items a few sections that we can cite them for that we're now doing diversion on. And so they're being asked to go to educational class of some type. That's that we recognize. And so they go to this class, we give them a ticket that's 4 months out, we hold on to that ticket, and then once they complete that class, we essentially make the ticket go away, and that's been written into the new municipal codes that were recently put in place. So that's something we've started, and it's been going well. I see a lot more kids wearing their helmets, that's for sure, which is great.
Yes, of course, that's great. But since the city is planning to spend, I think, $500,000 for this emergency bike safety issue, item 7C, it'd be great if we could target the more susceptible areas that have more accidents. So if you have any statistics like that, it'd be helpful.
Sure. Also, we're going to a new report writing program, and we're going to be incorporating the CHP's new format of our report. And what that means is we can better track the different types of bikes, regular bikes, e-bikes. And so that will be online hopefully in January. And so we'll be able to, I'm sure that'll be a great source of data for us, and we'll be able to really pinpoint where that's happening.
Okay, because on 7C, the agenda item has a map showing where the staff decide would like to make improvements, and again, it would be nice to target those if possible. So if possible, you have that data, so that'd be great. Thank you.
I'll ask the folks that do that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any other commissioners?
Thank you. Thank you for the report, and the new format is greatly appreciated. There seemed to be a cluster of accidents on El Camino and Encinitas Boulevard up to Via Cantabria. Is there any trend there or similarity, or is it just by happenstance?
So I know the El Camino corridor is always going to be a high collision rate area. We're not talking about your major collisions, although there is some. They're mostly fender benders, parking lots, things like that. Via Cantabria, I haven't noticed much more of a trend than usual, other than what we see on the screen here. But the accident rate is fairly low in this whole area, so when you get just a 1 or 2, it really stands out. So overall, our collision rate is pretty good for the city. And so when you get a few, they really stand out in that area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thiele?
Thank you, and Sheriff, thank you for the report. It's really, it's helpful the way the format is. I have a question on the education of the juveniles. Do you know where that's taking place, or how long do they have to stay? Is it a class or 2 classes? Is it online, or?
It could be several different formats. There's essentially, it's if we recognize it as a training class, like, for example, the city's putting on one class. We have the bike coalitions putting on a class. Some of the schools are putting on classes. So essentially, if it's a government-recognized safety program, then we accept it. And obviously, that's generally case by case, but we send a letter out to the family and let them know that to give us send us the proof of it, and then it might be a case by case if there's something strange, like some course we haven't heard of.
Thanks, yeah.
Any other commissioners? Okay, I have a couple. I'm glad that the citation program for the juveniles has started and that their ability to take a class is fabulous. It's a great way to mitigate the ticket. My question is, what are those citations for? Do you have data on that? And is that in our report? Does it tell us, like, 5 helmet citations, riding on the sidewalk, not following road rules, doubles on the bike? Like, I think that data the public would like to see, because those are some questions I'm getting, is what citations? So do you have the ability to track that, or?
We actually are tracking it. We are tracking it internally. My traffic secretary is actually using a spreadsheet, and for all the diversion sites we have, because they're not getting sent to the court, so there's no way to really track them unless we do it ourselves. And so we're tracking that, and with that, I'll be able to very easily, even myself, will be able to get the numbers for you next month for those, because we're citing essentially 3 main municipal codes. 2 of them I think are brand new. One is 2 riding on a bike, the helmet, which we've been doing previously, and essentially a catch-all for any unsafe driving. Essentially, the municipal code that says that we can now cite for essentially vehicle code violations on a bike. So if somebody's doing something like even on a phone or something like that, it could be, if it's considered unsafe, we could essentially use that municipal code to put them in a diversion program.
Okay, that's great, thank you. I look forward to seeing that data next time. And then I just also would like to thank your sheriff department. You guys are doing an amazing job, and I actually was involved, not myself personally, but in a traffic collision today right on Leucadia Boulevard and Orpheus, and Sheriff, I think her name is Tricia Dolard, was there. The most amazing sheriff. I cannot tell you how kind and compassionate and helpful she was, along with the Encinitas Fire Department. I just was so impressed with how they handled everything. So I want to thank you, because it was a family member, so it was just really nice. So thank you.
I appreciate that, and I'll definitely pass that along to her.
Yes, thank you. Okay, well, with that, any other commissioners have comments, questions? Okay, well, thank you again, Sheriff, for being here. I think we're now on to agenda item 7A. So it is the South Coast Highway 101 Engineering and Traffic Survey.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, since we have several residents here for 7B and 7C, is it possible that we kind of move A to the last item? I think it wouldn't be a long item, but I mean, since we have residents here, it might be better to.
Great
with your
idea.
permission.
I like that. Great. So do you want to just jump straight to 7B first?
I think, yeah, we can do. I think we have people for both, but I think we have more for 7B than 7C.
Sure. Okay. So we'll put 7A on pause, and we'll jump to 7B, Encinitas Municipal Code update for permit parking zones. Is there a presentation from engineering?
I wanted to go over the report, but don't we usually start with oral communications on it? How do we do it? My item first, and then.
We can do
Yeah,
it.
either way. Okay.
Either way. Why don't we do oral communications, and then maybe that way you can answer any questions
comes
you
up,
hear.
sure.
That's a great idea. Okay, let's start with, how many speakers do we have?
We have 8 speakers tonight. We'll start with Anthony Webster, followed by Bonnie Bobzian.
Good evening, Commission. I represent the neighbors of Via Palacio, Via Saracen, Via Tavera, and Via Villalina. We were granted the permit parking back in February of this year. We are neighbors. We're not an organized HOA that saw dramatic changes in our neighborhood. We joined together to pursue a solution to our problems, and we adamantly oppose the proposed revision of 14.41. Yes, our current code needs revision, but not the one offered by the engineering department. So tonight we have three topics that we would like to discuss. The first would be the history of the platform of the problem we experienced and why the permit parking is so important. The second is the deficiencies in the code revision and the provisions of the other city programs that would enhance our current code, as well as the code's proposed revision. The engineering department failure to follow the directives of the mayor cited in the February 22nd city council meeting as well. So first, to understand why we pursued the permit parking, we need to describe the source and the extent of our problems. The apartment complex, the resort, has been in existence since 1985, and we had no difficulties for 35 years. But in April of 2021, new ownership of the complex brought over occupancy, meaning the occupants on the lease are in the units. So there's been 80 plus vehicles flooded onto our 4 streets starting in April of 2021. And these additional vehicles brought problems that we've never experienced before. These included parties late at night on our 4 streets, the relentless beer bottles, syringes, condoms, people urinating and defecating in front of our homes, young men taunting women, fire hydrants blocked, and garbage cans moved. When we reported the incidents to the sheriff, cars were keyed and headlights were smashed as well. The resort refused to work with us and refused to talk to the sheriff and fire department. We met with the sheriff officials, including the captain, then Captain Lopez and then Lieutenant Lawrence. They said the sheriff's department is not the answer to our problems and encouraged us to appeal to the city council permit for parking. Our experience has shown that the sheriff was right and we cannot solve our problems through the sheriff's department. This is why permit parking is so important. So now, moving on. Now, for the second topic, we have reviewed the history of 14.41. We also studied the permit parking programs of 20 California cities. I actually have
Do you have a
extra
time donation?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I was going to check. So what do we, Amanda, does he have 3 more minutes here on a time donation? Yes. Okay, great.
Great,
Perfect.
thanks.
Continue.
So one of the most disturbing deficiencies is that the engineering department removed the quality of life from the code. The quality of life in regards to permit parking zones is acknowledged as appropriate concern by 3 separate sources. The first being the U.S. Supreme Court, the second being the Municipal Code of San Diego, and the third of all previous Encinitas resolutions granting permit parking. So the first one, in 1977, the U.S. Supreme Court stated that a residential parking ordinance did not on its face violate the equal protection guarantee of the federal Constitution because it bore a reasonable relationship to its objectives, which included enhancing the quality of life for residents by reducing air pollution, noise, traffic hazards, and litter resulting from non-resident and commuter traffic in residential areas. The second one is in Chapter 8, the San Diego Municipal Code states, a system of preferential residential parking as enacted in the division will serve to promote the safety, health, and welfare of all the residents of the city by reducing the unnecessary personal motor vehicle travel, noise pollution, and by promoting improvements in air quality, the convenience and attractiveness of urban residential living, and the increased use of public mass transit facilities available now and in the future. The public welfare will also be served by ensuring a more stable and valuable property tax base in order to generate the revenues necessary to provide the essential public services. And the third one, The quality of life was defined in all previous Encinitas resolutions granting permit parking. These resolutions define quality of life to mean noise, traffic.
Next, we have Bonnie Bobzine with time donations by Bob Fleischman and Darlene Bauer. And then next, we'll have Wendy Schlew.
Thank you. My two main points in this coming section are that there are many problems unaddressed by the proposed revision, and the solutions are easily found in other cities' permit programs. Here are 6 additional deficiencies present in the revised code. Number 1, there's unrealistic and unusual standards now exist in the revision. The traffic engineer proposes a 95% threshold of used parking capacity before qualifying for permit parking. This high threshold is not used in any of the 20 cities we have researched. Such a high threshold is excessive, punitive to homeowners, and will assure no neighborhood can ever apply for permit parking. Next, there is a lack of procedure for applying for permit parking zones and extending boundaries of established permit zones. A neighborhood petition process is required, yet there is no stated percentage for the number of homeowners that must want permit parking before the city can act. No protocol exists on how to handle an apartment complex that wants to be part of a permit zone. Other cities require that the owner of the apartment complex must want permit parking. If the owner doesn't want it, it doesn't matter what the tenants want. If the owner approves permit parking, then a survey of tenants is done. There needs to be a stated percentage of tenants required to pursue permit parking. Number 3, parking fees by apartment complexes. Problems arise if the parking fee for a public permit zone is less than the fee charged by an apartment complex for on-site parking. This encourages apartment tenants to park on public streets to avoid the parking fee of the apartment complex. This leads to inefficient use of on-site parking. Anaheim has a policy that states a residential property is not eligible for participation in the permit parking program if on-site parking costs more than the cost of permit parking. Other cities, such as Anaheim, require apartment complexes within a proposed zone prove they are using their on-site parking efficiently before they are allowed to join a permit zone. This provision is absent in the revised codes. This was a problem with our neighborhood. Surveys of the resort private parking lots and their private streets showed 80 to 100 empty parking spaces at night, while we had 80 vehicles on our streets not belonging to homeowners. Next, other cities require permit holders to park on the street of the permit address. We have tenants from the resort who are not using their private lots, their private streets, or the permit street closest to their resident, Via Molina, when open parking sites exist there. Sacramento restricts how far a permit holder can park away from the permit address, even if this site is still within the permit zone. San Diego requires those with guest permits to park on the same block as the permit address. Number 6, there are missing definitions of key terms or definitions that are inconsistent with other cities' usage. We had multiple debates with the engineering department over the definitions of many basic terms. What is a resident when referring to a permit parking zone? According to the revision, resident means a person who owns, leases, or resides in a dwelling unit as defined in Chapter 30.04 that is located in the city of Encinitas. This definition of resident is unlike other cities. Furthermore, Chapter 30.04 has nothing to do with permit parking zones. Chapter 30 is the zoning code establishing regulations for how land is developed and the intensity of land development. The definition in 30.04 is that of a residential zone. Our focus is permit parking zone regulation, which is in Chapter 14. One of the most common definitions of resident in regards to permit parking zones is like Oakland's. It states, resident means a person whose legal, residential, or business address is in the designated residential permanent parking area. We had debates with the engineering department about the definition of the word in. What does it mean to be in a permit zone? This debate shows how important it is to have precise definition of terms to ensure the code is properly applied. Huntington Beach Protocol resolves this debate. It states only residents or property owners within the designated district are eligible to purchase permits. To be within the district, a property must adjoin the street where the restrictions are imposed. That can either be by having a front or side yard fronting one of the restricted streets. No debate over the meaning of in occurs when you have such a precise definition. What is a non-resident? This definition is absent from the revision. We had considerable debate with the engineering department over the meaning of this term. Again, this shows that definitions must be precise and specific to ensure proper application of the code. Oakland defines it as follows. A non-resident vehicle is not eligible to be issued a residential parking permit pursuant to your terms of your code. Guest, a definition is lacking. How long can a person park in a permit zone and be a guest? Days, weeks, months? We are experiencing people who have parked years on our 4 streets who are now displaying guest passes month after month. To prevent this abuse of guest passes, other cities give expiration dates for their guest passes, such as 1 day, 3 day, or 2 weeks. The guest passes have the expiration dates written on the pass, so the sheriff can tell when abuse is occurring. Our guest passes have no expiration dates or renewal dates, which allows this abuse. Commuter, no definite is offered. Residential area which is not owned, leased, or otherwise controlled by a resident who lives in the area designated as a preferential parking district. This is a sampling of the weaknesses in the revision that are failed to be addressed. There are more.
Next speaker is Wendy Shalhoub with time donation by Fred Gellin, and then we'll have Tony Julapur.
Hi there, Wendy Shalhoub from Via Palacio. Lastly, the traffic engineer did not follow the city council directives. In the February 22, 2023 meeting, when the engineering department presented exactly what is before you tonight, the city council gave instructions to the engineering department. Number 1, Major Krantz instructed city management and staff to develop a work product that addressed the tension at the interface of multifamily and single-family dwellings. Number 2, Mayor Krantz instructed city staff to plagiarize from other cities' permit programs to improve ours. The mayor is right. Other cities have valuable solutions for us to learn from. Number 3, these directives were ignored. The traffic engineer is presenting to you tonight the exact same proposed revision to Municipal 14.41 that he presented to City Council in February 2023. Under the new revision, the tension will remain at the interface because quality of life issues remain. In conclusion, this is the first revision of the code since 1998, when the permit parking program was introduced. Shouldn't the revision correct the deficiencies rather than ignore them? Shouldn't definitions align with other cities? Is this revision robust enough to deal with the future of Encinitas? How can you approve this work product to be passed on to the mayor and city council when there are so many weaknesses, flaws, and deficiencies? Why is Encinitas an outlier in so many respects compared to the 20 California cities that we have studied? If their resources are insufficient, then outsource the revisions to experts. Hire a consultant the way every other city and community does. Many new developments are coming, and the city needs to be prepared to handle the ensuing parking problems. The suggested revised municipal code 14.41 spells disaster for all Encinitas residents. And very soon you're going to see pictures that Tony's going to show you, which is what our community looked like and what all of Encinitas is going to look like if you accept the code that is being proposed tonight. The Parking Commission did not have the information that we are sharing with you tonight. Therefore, we hope that this information encourages you in the strongest sense possible to reject the revised code that is proposed tonight. You will now see pictures from Tony.
Next speaker is Tony Julapur, followed by Sylvia Demuth.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Tony Julapur. I reside at Via Palacio. Okay, so we're just going to share with you a few pictures. There are a lot more pictures. We just selected a subset of those that we would like to share with you so that you can see the quality of life, how it's been impacted in our neighborhood. Trash cans or cars basically blocking them. They're not properly parking their cars, obviously, and there has been instances where EDCO trucks couldn't use their lifters to lift them up, so we had to call them and have them to come back again next day. Trash, beer cans, I don't have to really say anything about it. This is how it's going to look like. At least twice a week, just on my street, we have to go around and clean up. Hazard waste, public health, public safety. This happened Saturday. A bucket of a gallon of paint, basically all over the street, and pretty much we had to call the city to come over and clean it up. Syringes, vomiting. The smell of this gas leak was basically, you could smell it 2 blocks away. I think we had to call the fire department to come over and have it cleaned up. I don't have to explain anything here. You guys can see what's going on here. This is not the kind of stuff that you want your children to see, not even family members. Oops, okay. Violations. You can see this van basically parking in front of fire hydrant. Another one, unattached trailer, not safe. Trailer hitched down, and obviously we found out this trailer was also stolen. Abandoned car, it's been there for like a week or so, been tagged a couple of times, even chalked. The non-residents basically repairing their cars. In one instance, you can see that they're actually painting their cars. This is happening on our streets. This is the quality of life that we have to put up with. Commercial vehicles. How would you like to have that in front of your house? Sometimes they park there for 3 days, 4 days with their cargo loaded. Tools, refrigerator. Actually, mine just broke down. I wouldn't mind buying that. Anyway, carpooling. They have multiple cars, and obviously they're carpooling. They're moving the equipment back and forth and leave their cars on the street. This is 6 a.m. on our street. We're averaging about 15 to 20 vehicles. Even with the permits, they're abusing the permits. Thank you.
Next, we have Sylvia Demuth, followed by Donna Gottfried.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sylvia Demuth, and I'm a homeowner at 198 Pacific View Lane here in Encinitas. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband and the homeowners and residents of Pacific View Lane and Seaview Court. We understand that you are in the process of making amendments to the permit parking, but I ask that you really take into consideration everything our neighbors on Via Molina has said. We've experienced this over and over. although our permit system has allowed this to be mitigated somewhat, we're still experiencing it. We have cars that are parked for long periods of time. We call the sheriff, and it takes a while to get to it and have them removed. We're still seeing syringes. We're still seeing baby diapers and clothing, all types of debris in the street. And as we were on our way here, the same vehicle that's been repairing his car for at least a week, which Donna can speak to, and she'll be next, was still there repairing the car. We have all kinds of things. So those pictures are very familiar. And if we go back in the records to February, I believe it was 2019, we submitted records such as that and photos so that we could get the permit parking. One of the things I would like to say in support of our neighborhood as well is that we're requesting that the permit parking status that has already been granted not be removed. And it can be improved, but the status that has been designated should be retained by our neighborhood. And why? It's because many of the circumstances and conditions that necessitated us having permit parking still exist. I named a few, and the Via Molina neighbors were very kind in having the pictures shown because the same obtains to our neighborhood. Overnight, we have approximately 95% of our parking spaces filled anyway. Seaview Court and Pacific View Lane is like a triple dead end. Seaview Court is a cul-de-sac, a single cul-de-sac, and Pacific View Lane is bound by a double cul-de-sac. Consequently, the fire department has regulated that there be no parking on the east side of the streets on Pacific View Lane or on Seaview Court, and that's a requirement for safety. In addition, I have a hospice home that's right next door to me. They have 6 employees that work there, and then they have the families that visit the sick patients that are there. Since the parking permit was enacted on Pacific View Lane, Seaview Court, and Seacrest, we've had 4 additional homes built at the end of the Pacific View Lane cul-de-sac because they broke through the cul-de-sac and they built the homes. They have no place to park. You can't park in the bulbs, and you certainly cannot park on the east side of either of the streets. In addition to that, there are several neighbors who now have children that are teenagers, and they have cars. So they're driving to school and so forth, so there are additional cars on the street. So what I am saying is that the same conditions obtain, and I have a list of that, and I can give you all the documentation. What I'm asking is that you do take a careful look at any amendments that you're putting forth and revise them. Please take into consideration what our neighbors are saying, and please maintain, for the time being, our parking permit as it is. The conditions necessitated. To do anything less would be to disenfranchise our neighborhood and the residents of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Do we have any more speakers?
We do. Okay. Next speaker is Donna Gottfried, followed by Karen Caden.
Hello, I'm Donna Gottfried. I live in the same neighborhood as the previous speaker. And we were granted in April of 2019 a permit parking in our neighborhood, which encompasses 3 streets. And 2 of the streets have fire lanes on the one side. The residents can park on the other. So our parking is limited to begin with. And I'm concerned about the proposed amendment, and I would like to be assured that our permit parking will stay as it is. It's not perfect, but it has improved our living and our parking in our neighborhood. I see the parking problems increasing in the city with the new building that's coming. And the previous speakers spoke of solutions at other cities, and I'll throw another one up. My husband grew up in Fullerton, California, and they got tired of hearing all this. They just implemented a rule, no overnight parking on the streets. I'll throw that up to you as a suggestion. And anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next speaker is Karen Caden, followed by Dennis Caden.
Hi. I live in Leucadia. We may need similar parking abuse eventually when the high-density housing element is in the corner of Plato and Piraeus. There's not enough parking in these developments when you see their plans. And I know the city passed an ordinance that they only have a limited parking and pushing for new millennium residents to ride e-bikes to grocery stores and all over the place. I'm not against biking, but I want to mention I am sensitive to this poor development, what they had to go through. When I saw those pictures, that can be anyone else's neighborhood, and I don't want it in my neighborhood either. So Encinitas has goals and policies are to be made for quality of life, is to enhance, preserve, and to protect. Quality of life is to improve, to secure a safe, healthy environment, and to provide, promote, and desirable livable atmosphere for all 5 Encinitas communities. We require protection and keep community character for residents who live on the street. Improve the parking provision for now and the future. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing your comments.
Next speaker is Dennis Caden, followed by Scott Campbell.
Hi there, Dennis Caden, Encinitas. So I agree with the residents that are speaking on behalf of protecting their neighborhood with this parking permit issue tonight. Everything they've said made sense, and a picture tells 1,000 words, and those pictures told 1,000 ugly ideas that we don't need in Encinitas. So the city could do a much better job researching successes of the other communities like the residents here have done. Those cities are much older, maybe more experienced than Encinitas, so we could learn a lesson. Some of those cities have requirements that require the property of the residents in the parking zone must touch the street in the parking zone. That makes sense. Why should they have to suffer for somebody down the road? Anyway, others have a distance measurements that separates the offenders from the innocent. You may consider this as an option. Only residential properties touching the parking zone street be allowed to utilize the parking permits. This allows for the best use of our general plan policy and the circulation element, policy 2.4. I love this. This was written by our founding fathers when we got emaciated by overdevelopment. And it states that when considering circulation patterns and standards, primary consideration will be given to the preservation of character and safety of existing residential neighborhoods. When conflicts arise between convenience of the motorist and neighborhood safety or community character preservation, the latter will have first priority. So this may be a stretch, but the existing people that have come up before you tonight should be considered the latter, and the existing residential neighbors. What was done at the resort, that landlord should suffer consequences. And if he wants to charge a higher fee, let him, but don't let him get away with parking on their street. if people don't want to pay the parking, maybe they should find somewhere else to go, and then he would realize that's a bad move. The basis for incorporation was to preserve quality of life and community character. So how come we're not doing that now? Why isn't that the priority? If a landlord makes the cost of parking on the property high enough, let them. Then the renters should take their money elsewhere and the landlord can pound salt. Protect the surrounding neighborhood. So let the market work its way through. Even the new, all the R30s, they're coming, and those people think the developers were given lower parking requirements. So be it. But Encinitas doesn't have to say, oh, but it needs to go in the existing neighborhoods. You got a chance to prevent it. Then the developer has to sell his wares to the guy, hey, I don't have parking, but I have low-income units and market rate units. Buyer beware. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
hope you do the right thing.
Thank you for your comments.
Our last speaker on this item is Scott Campbell.
Okay, good evening, traffic and mobility. I can't even get your name straight ever. It's too many words. I've been to many commission meetings this year, talked, but I haven't been to this commission this year. Last week at the council meeting, some of the stuff that was discussed, and I hope you guys pay attention, was signs. These no parking zones, how many signs are going to be going in? Sign blight and visual pollution is a big issue. The council discussed this last week. I advise you to pay attention. I really appreciate the speaker bringing up how the revised code didn't make any changes. This is not going to fly when it comes before the council if it doesn't have any changes. So you should do something right now. People are paying attention. And I also agree that this is really just to prevent this happening again. It's not to help the city, it's just to prevent this parking from becoming an issue, this permit parking. In this particular case of Via Molina, this went on for years, several years. We've had several meetings at the council, a lot of staff time, money has been spent. And based on the pictures I saw today, it didn't work. Quick build projects have not worked either. There's a lot of projects that really, in retrospect, in a review, are not working. We got to do better. I talked to some people that live on Crest Drive. There's unintended consequences. Did you know that some of this overflow parking is now parking on Crest Drive? Did you know that? Have you heard about this? It's true. Go check it out. Now, people have mentioned Piraeus and Plato. That's going to become an issue in the future. Piraeus has no parking. I don't know what's going to happen. The city may even give the land away. Maybe they won't. What about Coyle Gardens Drive? There's 500 units going in? Where are they going to go? There's one or two little tiny streets that are like a couple hundred yards at the most. This issue is not going away. I don't know. I don't have an answer, but we cannot put our heads in the sand and just pretend it's going to go away and legislate it. It's going to come to blows, and we don't want that. We saw some of the damage that people leaves on the street. What do you think those people are capable of when confronted face to face? I don't know jiu-jitsu, but I hope that the homeowners do. Thank you for your time.
Is that the end of our speakers? Okay, great. So I think we might have an engineering report. Before we do that, I just did want to address one concern that was raised a couple times, that I just wanted to let everybody know that we are not addressing your permit status tonight. So we have no, we're not going to be discussing that. We have no sway in that. That was decided by the council. What we are looking at and addressing is just the wording of this ordinance tonight. And also, just so everybody here is aware, we are a body that sends recommendations. We are not a governing body. The final ordinance is approved by council, so all we do is review it, and we send on our recommendations, and final approval is obviously with the council. So I'm just not sure if everybody understands that process, but I just wanted to make that clear, that we're just sending recommendations this evening. Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to your presentation.
Sure, Chair. Thank you very much. I'll try to cover some of the questions and comments that came up during oral communication in case commissioners, those became questions for them. So first of all, why we're here, as was mentioned, this is a continuation of our February 14th, I think, meeting with council, where staff provided its recommendation to council, which was not establishing this permit parking zone due to our interpretation of the code. Council heard from staff and the residents and sided with the residents that we establish this permit parking zone to see how it works, and then report back to council in a year. And that's what happened, and there were some other meetings in process for how the procedure worked and public outreach and community and Spanish speaking and everything, so which was taken care of and the signs were implemented and it's working. One of the directions of council that night, and the only direction that kind of relates to this item tonight, was to present the ordinance. I noticed there were some slides about check other cities and incorporate our comments about quality of life. There was none of that in the direction of council. Council's direction was.
Excuse me, ma'am, you are not allowed to speak out of turn. Please be respectful to city staff and let him present. He did not interrupt you when you were speaking. I'm sorry.
Yours.
Please continue.
The direction was to present the ordinance to Planning Commission and to the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission and receive their input. Now, obviously, we all understood that when they said present this to the Planning Commission and the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission, the idea was if these two commissions are interested to provide us input and feedback with regards to these other aspects that were discussed, quality of life, dangers, risks, safety, all these other aspects that were not incorporated because our proposal was pure traffic. What I did at the Planning Commission, which we will continue doing tonight, was we presented our position, which is this is a traffic item, this is a traffic code, this is about parking impact by non-residential, by commuter impacting a residential neighborhood. But if commission is interested in incorporating other aspects into this language, other quality of life concerns, other metrics, other criteria, this would be the avenue to do so, to say we are interested in seeing this language added into the code. So when we're presenting it to council, we'll say this was Planning Commission's position and this was Mobility and Traffic Safety's Commission. Planning Commission, when we expressed these other concerns about quality of life, other risks, other safeties, other elements, I mean, the video is obviously there, can be listened to. At 3 or 4 different occasions during the presentation, this topic came up. Planning Commission's position was that these are non-traffic related items. These has to be addressed by enforcement. These are not a topic that we're interested in seeing into our revision to the Muni Code. Again, Mobility Commission's position can be very different. Your whatever recommendation comes out of this meeting will be incorporated into the council report. I do agree. If we bring exactly the same thing back, there is a chance that council might say, well, yeah, this is the exact same thing. We still don't like it. Go back. Or if they hear that both Planning Commission and Mobility Commission thought this is a traffic concern, this is a traffic concern that we're addressing, and quality of life has a different metric or has a different criteria or has a different solution, they might accept it this time around. So that's what we'll know when it's presented to council late September. So this is the foundation of how we're here. Now, with regards to these existing permit parking zone that came up, that would they be grandfathered? My understanding right now as a city traffic engineer is that these would be grandfathered. There's no provisions in the code, not just this code, any other code of the city, when a stop sign is established, when a speed limit is established, when any traffic control is established. I guess this can be interpreted as a traffic control. If a code changes, it doesn't really eliminate the previous approval. This has a council approval of an ordinance, adoption of an ordinance, and this zone is established. Doesn't matter what I feel about it or what staff. This is an approved ordinance, adopted ordinance. So again, if council decides at any point to rescind an ordinance, that's a different story. But this code proposal, if adopted by council, does not change established permit parking zone based on my understanding of how Muni Code works. How we came up to this was presented to council the idea that we had all along, and again, it was brought up smartly during some of the slides, the foundation is residents. What do we call a resident, and what do we want to address? Traffic division, engineering department's idea was that this code is meant to prevent commercial, non-residential parking impacting residents. If there is a Target adjacent, if there is a, I don't know, Marshalls, if there's a Costco, if there is something that Home Depot is impacting this neighborhood by commuter non-residential parking, this is supposed to address that. If there is a resident that is impacted at their frontage due to various reasons, we all know what's going to happen to the city with the lower parking requirements that we have now. And it's not just Encinitas, everywhere in the state, everywhere in the country, it's similar. There are concerns. Mode shift is a goal. Climate action is a goal. There are multiple goals that are kind of leading into asking for less number of parking capacities available to different residences. What it would create is potential parking supply and demand issue. Now, we know that this would happen, but is the goal of this Muni Code addressing that? I don't think so. That's not our engineering department's position. We think this is not meant to address if an apartment complex is being built and has too many cars and we don't want it to spill over into a residence. Now, that might be Commission's position that we have to have some sort of a criteria to address that too. It's not in there right now, to clarify. So that was it. The resident definition that we have is very simple. If somebody lives there, no matter how long they're willing to walk, if they're willing to park and walk 5 minutes, they are allowed to, that's considered residential parking. Now, that being said, Planning Commission put a cap at this. They said maximum 5 minutes of walking can be considered a residential parking on a neighboring street and then a 500 feet radius. That was our definition. If somebody lives there, if somebody resides in a property and parks on the street, that's residential parking. Their guests, commercial deliveries to that, mail, anything else that is delivered to that residential address is still residential parking. And by default, anything other than that would be non-residential. So we didn't really define non-residential. Anything other than that is non-residential. The way we surveyed everybody else in Traffic World surveys that a residence parking usually is, because for privacy reasons, we don't want to go for license plates, there are complications there. We usually go identify those vehicles at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. If those vehicles are there at 1 a.m. when there's, all commercial and all businesses are closed, that car is usually considered a residential vehicle because it's there at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Now, there might be an employee of an adjacent business who left their car that night, but these are like very, I guess, very short, small percentages of vehicles. Usually that's how we identify. If we identify a vehicle at 10 a.m. and that vehicle was not there at 1 a.m., we can assume that vehicle was not a residential vehicle. If it was there at 4 p.m., wasn't there at 1 a.m., and there are different ways of surveying is to identify if this vehicle is a spillover from the Home Depot nearby or if it's a other commercial parking that's there. With regards to the criteria, we knew that we were creating a stringent scenario. We knew that this is a tight scenario, and again, these numbers are not set in stone. Commission, I mean, there were some discussions at the Planning Commission with regards to changing this, but in the end, they decided to keep it tight. Reason being that, well, let me explain what it is. Our current criteria, the way it's proposed, is that we first want to see 25% of the parking in the neighborhood belong to non-residents. Again, 25% non-resident means these are from the businesses, from people who are conducting work. They're not living in the 5-minute radius of that permit parking area. And then the second one is if 25% of the cars parking there are belonging to those non-residents, then we want to see a real parking issue. With regards to parking issue is the parking supply and demand. That's where that 95% comes in. Our idea is if there are still parking available in the neighborhood, because we know this will happen everywhere in the city. In the future, it would be even worse than this. If there is a still parking available, even though 25% are non-residents, we can live with it. But if there is no parking available in the neighborhood, if it's 95% plus means 1 out of 20 space, basically. So if there are 20 parking spaces and only 1 is available, then we consider it an issue. And that's where we're saying, okay, 25% of this 20 parking spots taken are non-residents, and then there's no other place, there's only one space left for the residents to park, now we're willing to establish a permit. This is the 25% and the 95%. And that 95% comes from that 1 out of 20, assuming a 400, because our blocks are usually 440 feet. That's the standard block length, and that's interprets to around 20 spaces, usually less than that because of the driveways. But that 95 is not totally arbitrary. Obviously, it's not from a different city. That's just a 1 out of 20 number. And the rest are just, I guess, tweaking the language. There was this old public work department that engineering was a division in, and now engineering is its own department. That's it. Again, not to emphasize not enough on this, if commission feels like we have to address quality of life, other concerns not just I guess trash or litter or anything that you heard tonight, any other concern that you have that is non-traffic related, as an engineering department, we didn't have a metric. We didn't know, okay, how many bottles of beer would constitute a safety concern or an issue with the neighborhood? How many, I don't know, trailers left with leaves on them would, so these are not engineering topics. How many calls to the sheriff's office would constitute an issue? How many tickets would constitute an issue? Even if we establish that into the language, how do we measure effectiveness? How do we later on assume this was a success, this was not a success? So these are stuff that are all non-engineering. As a traffic engineer, I couldn't stand behind a proposal because this is not really, we obviously can't copy paste or get something from. Maybe it's something, again, Planning Commission would have been a perfect avenue because they deal with these stuff all the time. But again, their position was that these are enforcement issues. These are, we don't want to create a situation that would privatize our streets. They had a lot of other equity concerns, and that was why, in a way, they didn't even 100% agree with the decision that was made at council. They felt like there were other options, but again, this is a council-adopted resolution, ordinance. Planning Commission doesn't have any authority over that. But I wanted to give you the full picture of how Planning Commission went in case you haven't heard it. I think I covered it. Oh, there was another thing about the number of signs, correct? There are a lot of signs, but I have our traffic sergeant here. In order to be able to ticket somebody, there are regulations with regards to how far the nearest no parking sign should be. So we cannot have a sign 400 feet away, minimizing the number of signs, and then also, enforce the permit parking zone. So we had some limitations. We try to use existing posts at least, or existing poles, not to create new telespar posts in the neighborhood. But then again, I feel there were an additional 40-some signs added to the neighborhood. Modification of zones, I think it did come up. We do have the option of modifying zones in case we make a mistake and don't add a neighborhood or don't add a community or don't add a complex to the resident. There is a chance that council might want to add an additional 1 or 2 complexes to the existing established permit parking zone on Via Molina. Other zones, as council always has the authority to modify those in case we want to tweak those. That's not a problem. Yeah, I think I've covered most of the questions I've heard, and also the ordinance that we're talking about tonight. I'm open to questions.
Thank you for the presentation, and I appreciate the clarification on exactly what we are doing tonight, because tonight what we are looking at is just the municipal code update for permit parking zones and how it relates to traffic and parking in neighborhoods. So I appreciate that. I will turn it over to my fellow commissioners. Anybody have questions? Okay, Commissioner Thiele.
Hi, Sheriff. In terms of enforcement on Via Molina, for example, do you have any data, or do you wait for residents on that street to call and issue a complaint, and you go and check the permits, or how exactly does that work?
We do respond to complaints, obviously, but also we wanted to set a precedence early on, so we've cited hundreds of vehicles for the permit. issue. So, yeah, we initially went out there when it was just warnings, made sure everyone received their warnings that we're in violation, and then basically as soon as the first of the month, or when we started it, we went out and gave a different reminder for everyone.
Okay, thanks.
How many current permit parking areas do we have in the city? And that I was actually addressing the sheriff, sorry. I just was wondering, do you actively ticket other areas in the city, or is this the only one?
I believe this is the only permit parking area, other than private parking, which we wouldn't cite for.
Okay.
We have occasional enforcement at Seacrest, but it's not as obviously frequent as this one since it's newly established.
Okay, okay. So I'm just going to let my other commissioners, anybody else have questions, comments? Yep.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson here. I found the concerns of the residents to be quite compelling, and one of the suggestions I'd heard was to prohibit overnight parking, or perhaps prohibit overnight parking on alternate sides of the street to get rid of some of this long-term storage of vehicles. That doesn't seem to solve the problem on the table. So I don't know what else I can say.
Okay, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Commissioner Wong?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a few questions just for my information. So how is the quality of life defined? And how can you tell when you cross the line between having quality of life and not having quality of life?
I was hoping the commissions could help me with that. Again, on our side, on the engineering side, our quality of life definition is, again, obviously not very complete, just traffic. Supply and demand of parking being impacted by commercial adjacent to your residence. If the parking spillover is impacting your parking capacity and you can't park your car or your residents' cars or your guest cars, that's the piece we're addressing. There's no other, for traffic, for engineering, we're not addressing any other quality of life concern. If there is an input, Planning Commission didn't have an input. These were discussed, these other quality of life aspects, they did not like to include it in the code.
Okay, so essentially saying if I can't find a parking space near my house, then it's impacting my quality of life. Is that basically it?
If it's by non-residential, if it's by your neighbors, it is what it is.
Yeah, okay, understand. So I also was wondering, when you consider a parking permit restriction, then how do you know that the problems that are in that area won't just move someplace else, such as trash and beer cans, et cetera? Why won't that just go to some other neighborhood and be someone else's problem, and then they'll ask for a permit?
It is possible. Usually, many other cities have experienced this. It's usually a domino. It usually goes to neighbor. These kind of permit parking zones, these situations, even when they're just for parking supply and demand. We had a few calls, not very huge, but we had a few calls from the neighboring Beech Tree Street that had concerns that there has been some spillover on their neighborhood. We think those might be from the two complexes that used to use Via Molina before that right now cannot use that. We're not sure if it's the immediate impact of this, but chances are it is.
Okay, and I was wondering what the process was in developing this amendment. Did you have any workshops asking, say, what the residents or stakeholders may have as concerns?
By amendment, you mean?
Well, this revision to the earlier one in February.
The Muni Code update, you mean?
Correct, yes.
No, there's no community, because this is a citywide permit parking zone language. It's not a neighborhood-specific code.
I see, but there wasn't any outreach to the public?
To the city, no.
Okay.
Well, the Planning Commission and Mobility Traffic Safety Commission agenda gets posted, but there wasn't any kind of a public announcement.
Right, and there are opportunities like this one for public to express their opinions.
Yes, our Planning Commission no disrespect to our mobility commission, obviously, our planning commission is very well followed by the residents due to obviously concerns of development review and everything that's happening in the city. And these both, I mean, those agenda packages, I think, gets posted about a week in advance.
Yes.
But both commissions do get posted in advance, and there are a lot of residents who follow these commissions. And there was a council direction that said these would be reviewed, so. But yeah, there was no, I guess, advertisement in paper, because for citywide, we don't send out letters. For neighborhood-specific outreaches, we do send out letters, but for citywide, there's no, I mean,
Right,
we have
just
a
your
social
website.
media account.
Understand, yes, so.
Yeah.
I know we can aspire to be as popular as the planning commission, but we're not there yet. So, thank you, that's all the questions I had. Thanks, Abe.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions that maybe you can clarify on. I understand that there are 2 sections of the city with permit parking currently?
On paper, I think there's 4, but I think 3 are operational.
3 operational, okay. Now, you made a comment that perhaps that existing permit areas would be grandfathered in under the conditions that the permit system was originally granted. Can you expand on that?
Correct. These existing permit parking zones have adopted ordinances by city council, and similar to other ordinances, when the Muni Code changes, the change in the Muni Code does not trump the adoption of the older ordinances. So those are still considered legit adopted ordinances.
So these proposed changes would not impact the current parking permit areas?
Not this, like if this goes to council and gets adopted, the municipal code will change. It would be an ordinance, change the Muni Code, amend the Muni Code. This by itself would not eliminate those. But if at any point council decides to say we want to reevaluate existing permit parking zones based on the new language, it's like our stop sign criteria for the city has changed 3 times the past 20 years. If at some point council directs us, hey, we want to see how many of our existing stop signs in the city meet our current criteria, bring us a report, and then I come back and say, okay, 30 of these intersections do not meet the stop sign criteria of the new Muni Code of the city, say, okay, take them out. This can happen, but just adopting this revision does not eliminate existing adopted ordinances of these permit parking zones.
So, sorry to belabor the point, but then you're saying that the council would have to take some positive action or some action to change the permit system, if you will, of the existing parking permit areas in the city?
If they want to, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Another comment here. It strikes me that most of the homes in the, what's that community called? Terraces of Cantabria? Yes, most of the homes are single-family homes with garages and driveways. And that was, when they were built, that was enough for parking at least 2 cars. So the residents are really complaining about the public nuisance of having litter strewn on their streets regularly and having automobile repairs conducted by distant people. This strikes me as an enforcement issue, and is the Sheriff's Department able to enforce this?
So I think maybe you can ask sorry for interrupting here, maybe we can ask the sheriff how many calls that they've responded to. That might be good, but I do agree, Commissioner, that that seems outside of traffic. It is an enforcement of other issues.
Yeah. So the question is Sheriff, how many calls have you responded to in the past, in this year?
As far as parking,
Yes.
numerous, but as far as parking, I mean, a lot. I couldn't give you a specific number, but as far as the litter and that kind of thing, probably none for littering, but probably some for people repairing their cars in the roadway. But the littering, unless we actually see somebody litter, we can't really enforce, unfortunately.
Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Gross, did you have anything? No. Okay. Well, thank you again for your presentation and your recommendations to the municipal code. These are public streets, and again, I appreciate the criteria that you've laid out for how to assess if parking is impacted by non-residents, and I support what you have recommended along, and I agree with Planning Commission that the other issues are outside of our purview. So I move to approve staff's recommendation and send this along to council. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, can we have a vote? Or? I can't remember how to.
Do we vote on here?
I'm not quite seeing it up there yet, Amanda. There it is. Thank you. That's okay. Okay, I think, have we all? Okay, so the motion passes 4-1 with 1 abstaining. Thank you. I think we're now on to 7C, which is potential improvements for City of Encinitas local state of emergency on bike and e-bike safety. Do we have any speakers?
We do. We have 4 speakers tonight. Did you want to go ahead with that first?
Yeah, let's do that first. Same way. I like that, because that way Abe can address the comments. I think that is.
First, we have Rachel De La Vega, followed by Aaron Hebsche.
Good evening. Very glad to be here. I only just happened to look, say, oh, what meetings are going on? And I saw this meeting, I saw the agenda item. I started writing a letter. It's like, well, let me just come down and see you. And this is many of the items that will be helping make bicycling safer, and I really applaud all the efforts of the council or the commission and the engineer. But one thing that is on here was also discussed back in February, which was narrowing the traffic lanes on Rancho Santa Fe Road. I read or recall that did not eventually move forward, and the reason may have been that the fire department opposed any reduction in traffic mobility, obviously, because that is the evacuation route for all of Liebenhain and a lot of Rancho Santa Fe. So I'm here to oppose that again, and if there is a reason why that has been brought back, if there is a different rationale, would be glad to see that. Also, I believe the little map showed, I live off of Lone Jack, and I think it meant, I'm not sure if Sharrows was part of the plan, but we are in a dark skies neighborhood. Sharrows are for traffic that's under 35 miles an hour. I've looked up some studies. I could send that to you all. We're 40 and above. We also don't have streetlights, so you've got kids or people on e-bikes going home in the middle of the road, and a car comes up and for whatever reason doesn't see them. So that, to me, may not be the best option if that is what's being considered. That's really all I had to say. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments and taking the time to come in.
Next, we have Aaron Hebsche, followed by Judy Burlfine.
Thanks this is Aaron Hebsche. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. Thanks for considering this. Thank you to the city for initiating an emergency declaration and working to improve our safety for bikes and e-bikes, and also pedestrians in our town. One item that's not discussed in the city's presentation that we'll see later is an effort to reduce vehicle speeds on our streets. This is the most important thing we could do for our safety. This can best be done through road redesign, but the process is expensive and time-consuming. In the meantime, we have been appreciating the stepped-up enforcement from the Sheriff's Department to reduce speeding infractions, and I think that sent a message that speeding needs to come down. But there's also a bill going through California right now. It's called AB 645, which, if passed, would initiate a pilot program to deploy speed cameras in 6 select California cities. And that's and it's being done so in a way that addresses a lot of the complaints about speed cameras that have come up in the past. So this program specifies that speed cameras would capture license plate numbers, vehicle make and model, but not the driver. So it addresses some privacy concerns. The tickets would go to the register owner, and we'd let the register owner duke it out among who was actually driving, I guess. Fines would be scaled by how fast above the speed limit the driver was going. Low-income offenders could get a reduced fine, similar to the e-bike diversion program. They also have a community service option. Speed camera locations would be chosen based on an objective look at collision data. And so it was great to see that you guys are working on getting some real-time and near historical information on where those collisions are. And the net revenue would be used for traffic calming. So this is a super good model for instituting a traffic speed camera system. How does Encinitas get on this train? Is there a way that we can petition the authors of this bill to add our city into this pilot program that they're looking at? This is a question for the commission. I don't know if it's something that the city can take on as a whole. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comments tonight.
Next, we have Judy Burlfine, followed by Scott Campbell.
Hi, I'm Judy Burlfine, and thank you, Abe, for your recommendations. I am in favor of some of them and want to put an emphasis on others of them. 2 people came up and spoke during oral communications. Is the timer going to be on so I know where I'm at? Oh, okay. I just want to know if I'm running out. 2 people who were trying to make a turn in an intersection, and one was who's almost hit and one who was harassed. I think in addition to slowing speeds, we need to look at intersections. Those are really, really important areas where we can make a lot of progress. Turning left and turning right is where everyone is getting hit. And I like, Abe, what we did on the cycle track and how when the cars turn right into Swami's, they go over 2 sets of humps to slow them down. I think that's very helpful to keep everyone alert. We need to slow the cars down when they're turning. We need to turn at a wider angle so there's greater visibility. And I think if we can, I think I misunderstood what you said for signaling or lighting or something. I think if we could improve our signals so we have no right turn on red. It's horribly dangerous to have cars whipping around corners on red light. And if we can plan our signals so the bikes know what to do and the cars know what to do and the cars aren't running into the bikes. And I sent a few of you some information about some great guidelines that spells all of this out, and I'm happy to send it to more people. I also provided a video that I'd like to show that emphasizes how crazy this is when we have people crossing over, the cars turning right and the bikes getting kind of stuck in no person's land. So if you can play that video, it's the first 35 seconds. You can stop it after you see the girl almost get hit, and then we don't have to watch anymore after that.
I cannot find the video.
Oh,
Do you know where it's at?
Amanda says she sent it to you.
It's open? I don't see it.
Amanda, could you just adjust her time, please? Okay, I didn't, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And you can keep the sound off.
The sound is off?
Yeah, yes, no sound. It's just the person's radio. So the person, I didn't take this, but someone sent it to me. He was watching all the bikes, but then, so he looks at this person over there. That's not relevant, but what is relevant is what happens when the girl is riding her bike and then the car decides to turn right in front of her and she doesn't look around, and then that car at least slows down. So I think the girl was in the wrong, the driver was in the wrong, but the infrastructure didn't help. So there's lots of ways to make it so people can turn without running into each other. It scares me the way we have it set up now. You can stop it. The rest is just noticing that the passenger doesn't have a helmet. So that's it. The intersections are really, really important, so pay attention to them. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for sharing that video and your comments.
Our last speaker is Scott Campbell.
I don't really have a position on this, but there's some points to be made. We're looking at spending $2 million. I think a lot of people in the city would prefer to have roads fixed and drainage as opposed to bollards. And in particular, roads fixed because of the crumbling roads with the asphalt falling all over the place, and you're trying to turn on a bike. We all know what happens to that front wheel. A safe road is actually safer for bikes, safer than a shared lane, diet, or whatever you want to call it. Now, there's a picture on this staff report shows where you're going to put street lighting and signage. I object to the word countermeasure. Is this a war? Really? Is this a bike versus everybody? Countermeasures, and that's a strong word. But in particular, it shows streetlights on Piraeus Avenue, and I think that's very tone deaf, and I asked that to be taken off this immediately. In a couple of weeks, there's a big discussion coming up on a project on Piraeus, and lighting is a big issue. And to have that, it's just rubbing its face. It's rubbing our faces in this issue here. You know, people are protesting lighting, and here it is. Birmingham coming up on the council this week too. Lighting is an issue on that street. I'd like to see some of these reports that say it's going to be safer. Right? Yes, slower speed is safer. If you go too slow, it's not safe. And I think that when we say safer, we need to put probability estimates on this. How much safer is it going to be? And what's the confidence interval? Just to say it's safer is nothing. It's safer to stay in bed too. It's safer to not go in the bathtub. But we all do it anyways. We need to quantify what safer really means. Otherwise, it's meaningless. And other than that, yes, there is an emergency. I have a bike. I ride it. The bike lanes on Streetscape are working. I get cut off by people turning right. And you know what? If I don't go too fast and I pay attention, it's not a big deal. If you make a big deal, it becomes a big deal. Bikers are just as responsible for their own safety, perhaps more responsible, because it's you. If you get hit, it's you. The car, they're bummed, but the car still survives. It's the bikers that need to be safety. It's not all bikers on all roads all the time. There's a lot of people in this community that will never, ever get on a bike on any road, no matter what. That needs, right there, one of these commissioners raises his hand. It's not all about that. Mobility. We'll get that to the 35 miles per hour. Thank you for your time. This has been a long meeting.
Thank you for your comments. I think now, if that was our last speaker, I think now it is time for our report. Thank you.
Sure, Chair. Thank you again. Again, trying to address some of the questions I heard during the presentation. So first, again, that kind of touches on a few questions that came up. Why are we here tonight? As you know, the City Council declared emergency last month, and one of the directions that staff received at that meeting was the engineering department will take a look at the city's infrastructure to identify potential opportunities, potential improvement areas. Now, it's very, very early to say, like, these lines on these two maps are actual projects funded. Obviously, they're not funded. None of them were on our work plan. None of them have actual designs at the moment. And staff did a very quick powwow for 2 weeks because we promised council will go back in a month. Obviously, in a month, you know, in city timing, it's really not that much. So we created these two maps just based on our existing documents. We have a local roadway safety plan. That's a Caltrans document that we studied safety all around the city, came up with a bunch of projects that grants project. We went over our active transportation plan that has 66 bike projects and I think 10, 15 pedestrian projects. We went over our existing documents, and we also did a quick sweep of the city, existing facilities, existing infrastructure that we have, to see what we can do to make it better. Again, with no consideration, has to be said for the record, for the other stuff that's going on. Like Rancho Santa Fe, it was brought up. We took it to council. Council decided to table it at that point. Various concerns was, let's revisit this when there is a pavement rehab project, repaving this. Let's not grind out existing striping and make the street look ugly. This is too much to take. Let's reevaluate this. Let's look at this deeper. There were others. Lighting came up, similar topic. There are areas that don't want lighting in the city. We know that. This approach was to identify all these potential improvements, knowing the fact that at the moment there's no funding for them, there's no design for them, there hasn't been any community outreach for each individual project. Now, when we present these to council in September, how council wants to take it, is it going to be a approach of, yeah, let's go do all these in a month or 2 months, here's $2 million, go build all of them, or no, let's take them one project at a time, or no, this is a prioritization that we want you to look at, first do these kind of projects, then do this kind of projects. There is a lot that currently is not known. We don't know how, so this is the first stop in getting a more, I guess, organized thought about implementation of this. Commission might say, Abe, we'd like these additional bike lane projects in this city, or we like these additional signing and striping. These are low-hanging fruits. You can easily do them. Or conversion of class 2s to class 4s. Yeah, this is too much. We already have all these different points of views in the city about converting bike lanes to class 4s. Maybe hold off on those for now. Or lighting, yeah, maybe these can be the last set of projects that you take on. How do you want to handle community outreach for these? Or each one of these will be a discussion with the neighborhood, with the community, to see what they like. We talked about Saxony last month at the commission, well, 2 months ago at the commission, where the northern parts of the Saxony, we said, well, we're not sure if we want to take away parking to add bike lane. We added that. It wasn't the commission's direction at that point. Commission only directed us to do the southern half. But again, for the sake of presenting all the potential ideas to council, we did. We know what a big undertaking it is to just take away hundreds of parking spaces and add bike lanes. It's not an easy task. But we wanted to have everything that we thought was feasible, was doable. It's not a $10 million project. It's still a bike lane. Now, it has other implications, obviously. But this was the idea behind creating these two maps. $2 million is just an estimate. It might be $5 million. Again, this is just back of a napkin. We only had like 2-3 weeks to work on this. Many of these, there might even be some, but we kind of think we kind of throw out all the ones that have serious feasibility issues, but there might still be some here that have feasibility issues. So that's how this got initiated. Sharrows on Lone Jack, I did a quick look. I don't think there is a sharrow on Lone Jack proposed. There is a small stretch on El Camino that the speed might be acceptable. MUTCD doesn't reject sharrows on 40 miles above. It just gives caution to the engineer and asks for additional measures added with the sharrows. It used to be very strong. The language was very strong before for using sharrows, but after 2014 revision 3 or 4, it kind of got changed. We still try to minimize using sharrows. I don't think we have any in the city at 40 or above. But then again, I didn't see anything on El Camino, on Lone Jack. Yeah, here there's no sharrows on Lone Jack. There's like a small stretch on El Camino. Speed limit changes. Very good point, very valid point. The direction, the idea that we are here for tonight is that direction from council to review infrastructure improvements in the city and come back to council with potential opportunities. Not going too much off the record, but we are going to go to council in October, November, give them a presentation of the AB 43 and what it entails and how we can utilize AB 43 to lower speed limits in the city. Give them a very short summary of what the language is, what our authority would be, and what changes we can anticipate in the city. Get a direction from council with regards to what they want us to focus on, what the emphasis should be with regards to utilizing the options in AB 43. And then we'll go back in February, March of 2024, get council's approval for lowering speed limits on different roadways of the city based on their direction, the safety corridors, and then high active pedestrian and bike corridors of the city, the areas that AB 43 does allow us to lower speed limits, and then use the window between February, March, and July 1st where we can actually start enforcing to change the signs and pavement legends or whatever we have to do in the city to make it enforceable. So that's our plan for AB 43. We are parallel, we can start a little bit faster looking at opportunities to implement business districts, prima facie 25s. There is new language in AB 43 that we can implement those a little bit sooner. We're looking at South 101, maybe our downtown, establish business districts and post them 25 prima facie. That is an option we're looking at. AB 645 was brought up. I know we have some commissioners who really like it. It can start from the commission. Usually, as you know, these being included in these pilots, council would express interest to the sponsor of the bill if they want to add us. It can be initiated from commission, send something to council. Hey, council, we're suggesting you express interest in being included in the bill. If we want to do that, I don't know how far that bill is. I did hear it's going to be voted on soon. I'm not sure if it's enough time to get on the wagon, but council expressing interest would be the first step. No turn on red, certainly an option. We are including LPIs at all of our traffic signals very soon. That kind of works like that, not exactly like it, but the LPI kind of help with vehicles not being able to turn right on reds that quick.
I'm sorry, can you explain what an...
Yes, the lead pedestrian interval, LPI, is where the pedestrian would get their white walk time a few seconds in advance of the vehicles getting their greens to turn right onto the crosswalk. So the pedestrian would get to occupy the crosswalk first, and with the CVC, once they step in, it's theirs, and the vehicles, no matter how long they have the green for, they will not be able to get in the crosswalk. So this is a grant funded. We're receiving, I think, about $1 million. I think 1.2 million from Caltrans. That's all state funded. We're upgrading all of our traffic signals in the city with new controllers and implementing LPIs. It should start later this year. The $2 million price tag came up. Again, it's very, very ballpark back of a napkin estimate. It might be even more than that. To spend it on other areas, pavement, drainage, certainly something that council can weigh in, and this is above my pay grade to say where this potential emerges, because it's not funded. If it's going to be funded, it has to be council dedicating funding to this from different sources of funding. That's really not for me to say where this money should come from. When we're taking this council, we're actively working on this, but because of the nick of time, we're kind of in a, I guess, a 50% version. The version that we're taking to council, we are trying to have a line item for each one of these colored lines, have a rough estimate for each line, the dollar amount, potential concerns like the stuff I said about Saxony parking removal or speed issue for this Sharrow location proposed or concerns of Francis Santa Fe. We want to add a column that kind of expresses a few lines or a few notes about each one of these projects, something for council to consider. And if they want to drop a project right now, there's no, I mean, obviously I'll take notes and we'll add it into the motion. But if commission says we like these more than these other ones or remove these from, there's no project number for these. But yeah, I'm asking if you want to add or prioritize or remove or suggest we reconsider something, do mention those. But when they go to council, we will have project numbers for each so council can prioritize or remove or add to this. The nature of them, I said, are all infrastructure improvement, lighting, additional signage, new bike lane, conversion of bike lanes to class 4s, addition of buffers, lane narrowing, sharrows, and 4 bike boxes at our 4 major intersections.
Abe, could you explain what a bike box is, please?
Yes, so I hope Google helps me here. Not helping. Maybe this can. So yeah, something like these. So when you have a multi-lane approach, this is perfect where you have cases of multi-lane approach. For one lane, it does help, but not as much. 2-lane, 3-lane, 4-lane roads. You create a L-shaped, usually green area at in advance of the stop bar. So instead of a biker starting their approach toward a left turn pocket a couple hundred feet in advance of an intersection, crossing a few lanes in a wide road that most often wider roads are a little bit faster too, kind of like the situation we had on El Camino Real. So if a biker is going to diagonally cross 2, 3, 4 lanes, they get to the intersection area, and then once it turns red, they get into the green box and then turn left in front of all the vehicles in the left turn pocket. That's usually a purpose. It's kind of a 2-stage turn, but in a lot of cases, it's a lot safer than the single stage and following the green.
Cars can't enter that bike box?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Interrupted you, I'm sorry. You
No,
were
I was
describing all
done.
of
I
these.
was done. And then again, this is not, I guess, not that we have a very fancy, classy reports for commission, but this is not to the level that we usually like presenting reports to. The only reason was that I have to go to council, and I didn't want to go to council before at least presenting something to the commission. And even the one that I'm going to present to council, I'm not going to be very happy with, but we only had 1 month for a citywide sweep of all of these are like, I don't know, 50 different CIP projects by themselves. And yeah, many of these I'm concerned if I promise to council we're going to make them, we don't even have a design, we don't have any kind of outreach yet in place. How it's going to work out, I don't know. But yeah, I guess we got a direction and we're trying to kind of follow that direction for now.
Okay, thank you. Was that it, or did I cut you
No,
off?
no. Go
Okay. I just wanted to check in with the sheriff before commissioners have questions and comments. When you look at this list, what do you think would be most helpful for creating a safe environment? And I don't know if you have the list in front of you, but I maybe not the locations, but just the list, like additional signage, sharrows, green paint, conflict striping. Like, I don't know if Abe can put it on the screen, or what of those do you think would be most helpful in creating safety for our cyclists? Because you guys are out there every day and you see the results of unsafe situations. So I would love your input.
So unfortunately, what's not on here is educating of the public would be the greatest thing to do, in my opinion. But as far as these items,
Great. I put you on the spot again.
It's
Do you
okay.
want to, we'll
While
ask
he's
questions
looking
and
at
you
it-
can circle back, or?
Let me give an update. Thanks for bringing that up. while Jeremy's looking at it. So education, again, this is just infrastructure improvements that we're supposed to give to council, but we are actively working on education. There is a new webpage that's in the works. It's 50% plus, but the webpage is it accessible, Amanda, or not yet? Not yet. But the webpage is in the works. There's a lot of information we're adding in there, educational material, videos, frequently asked questions. There's a lot of information that we're adding in there. As you know, we recently hired, I guess we kind of was planning on talking about it during our commissioner corner. We have Nick Buck here, our new mobility manager, who will be helping us a lot with outreach and community and schools and education and different campaigns. That's something else that obviously just got initiated, so that's also a big help to us. There is a lot of effort going on the education and outreach side. That's I guess it's a lot further ahead than what we're looking at here. This is relatively a long way out with the funding and design and implementation, but the education and enforcement, I guess enforcement is separate, but education and public outreach and reaching to our kids and drivers and educators, that's already in process. We're a lot more ahead there. All right. Hope I bought you enough time.
Okay, so like I said, the awareness campaign is number one for us, for both bicyclists and for the public. But anytime you can get cars as far away from cyclists as possible, that's always best. And so I would say the buffers are always good. The posts, like the green posts, like along Lucadia, they have some other issues as far as like emergency response and stuff. So although they do separate, there are some other issues with that, in my opinion. But other than that, I'm not an engineer. He's the brains here, so I would definitely leave it up to the engineering department for these types of things.
Okay, thank you. And I also apologize. I didn't realize that we had a representative from the fire department here, because there's a sign on the desk, but so thank you for being here tonight. We might have some questions for you. I appreciate you. You were just hidden back there, so thank you. Thank you for joining our meeting. So commissioners, I think Commissioner Gross is ready to jump in here.
I am, yeah. So I might pan outside the lines here a little bit, but because of the emergency declaration, hopefully we can, June will give me the ability to pan outside the lines. So Abe, the first question is to you. If you had all the money, budget not being a problem, would you greenlight all these plans today?
Some of them I'd definitely like to involve the community.
Okay.
Unless council gives me an override carte blanche that.
But would the number one barrier be budget? Number two being community feedback?
We tried to hash out the ones that had feasibility, like the right-of-way wasn't there. We needed like a major CIP improvement to build, widen the road or add a pocket here and there. Those are out. I do believe 90% plus of these are feasible if I had the money.
Right.
So yeah, I don't see a major feasibility concern here. The only thing is areas like Rancho Santa Fe, like Saxony, like Quail, where I would like to have some sort of a outreach to our residents. I don't want them to just because of declaration. I mean, I'm not really saying it's not important, but because of a declaration, we kind of bypass all of our standard practices of involving the community, telling them what's going to happen in their neighborhood. I don't want to really. Unless council said we want these built in 3 months, which means just go build it.
Okay, but it sounds like budget's the biggest issue. Sergeant Collis, over to you. I was able to actually look at all the numbers pretty quickly there for 2023, January through June. By an order of magnitude every month, speeding is the biggest violation that we have in our city. Nothing is even close. Second is distracted driving, it appears, on a ticket basis. I know there was a funding maybe not a funding shortage, but a hiring shortage you were going through, where you didn't have as many patrol officers on the street as you wanted to. Is that still the case?
Yeah, we still have a shortage. Luckily, our traffic unit here in Encinitas and North Coastal Station for all three cities that we're fully staffed. So except for we have one vacancy for a military guy, but we're filling that with overtime. So as far as traffic enforcement, we're fully staffed here.
Great. And so if you look at those numbers, though, if you had twice as many traffic enforcement officers, would those tickets go up by twice as much?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a perpetual speeding problem in the city that can be solved by an infinite number of officers potentially that could write those tickets, because it seems like most places, speeding is a massive issue, and most of it goes unticketed, unenforced, because you just simply don't have the manpower to enforce that. Okay, so we have a budget problem on the infrastructure side. We have an inability to write all the speeding tickets that we know are out there. We know speeding is the #1 killer of people on our streets, speeding and distracted driving. I know we're talking about education some, but again, because we're talking about infrastructure here, we had a comment earlier about AB 645, which I'm just going to call speed and traffic cameras infrastructure, because it goes into the ground, and it's infrastructure in the streets. AB 645, of course, we know that speeding and traffic cameras are the best deterrent to speeding outside of law enforcement. We also know that speeding cameras and traffic cameras are revenue generating, meaning we can do whatever we want with the revenue that we generate, but they do generate money. They don't cost the city anything. They are often allies to the police department. So I think it's in emergency declarations, I think it's time to actually be very serious about, one, never having a budget issue again as it relates to safe streets, two, being an aid to police enforcement. And Sergeant Collis, if I can ask you another question, I know I brought it up earlier, but do you think we would have been able to identify the suspect in the hit and run on January 1st if there was a speed and traffic camera on that intersection?
Definitely, it's a higher likelihood for sure.
And then, second question on that, do you think your investigation into the boy that was killed last month would have been a quicker investigation if we could actually had a speed and traffic camera there to see, exactly what happened? As eyewitnesses have said, he was signaling as he was trying to make his way through that area?
It would certainly help.
Okay. So I'm glad we talk about things like education, but like we're seeming to not wanting to attack the issue as a city potentially. I mean, a lot of people here for parking, not unfortunately for people dying on our streets. But I think it's our job as a commission to weigh much heavier into what are proven solutions that, if you look around the world, have already been implemented and work very well. And we are not leaders anymore around the world as it relates to pedestrian and traffic deaths. Other countries are beating us, even though we have, way better enforcement, way better ways to actually, these are areas we used to win in. And so I think it's our job as a commission to, of course, look at these infrastructure challenges, but then come up with much better solutions than, painting lines on streets. And so, just to go off what we heard earlier from a citizen, AB 645 is coming up. We should do everything we absolutely can to be involved as a pilot city in that program. I don't care about past city councils that are no longer on the city council that voted against traffic cameras or voted them out. Like, we're not about sunk cost bias here or something. We're about finding solutions to make our streets safe. So, again, to reiterate, we don't have a budget problem if we put traffic cameras in, because what Sergeant Collis said is he doesn't have enough officers to give the number of tickets that we would give if we could give all the tickets we would give. We would be able to solve the crimes that happen on our streets where we have hit and run drivers that kill people. So I think we're painting around the problems, and we need to address the problems directly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Johnston?
Oh, this has been weighing on my heart since June. I think young people are the future of the world. We're going to turn the world over to our children. And losing a bright young man this way really hurts. I want to talk about we need to have firm rules that are well communicated for both the motorcycles, bicycles, cars, pedestrians. And I think it kind of breaks down into lanes for low-speed vehicles, whether they're these e-bikes or whether they're other bicycles or electric scooters or skateboards, or who knows what's going to be invented next year. And maybe even electric wheelchairs. So I would think broadly in terms of lanes for low-speed vehicles. By low speed, I mean under 25 miles an hour. maybe under 20, which is bicycles and all. Ideally, we'd have separate roadways, maybe a 10-foot wide roadway with a dotted line down the middle for low-speed vehicles to travel, separate from all of these Detroit monstrosities, separate from all of the automobiles. I think I don't know all the rules of the road now. I ought to know. I'm old enough to have broken all of them, probably. But I think we have to make it very clear what these low-speed vehicles can do and what the high-speed vehicles cannot do. Can you ride bicycles on sidewalks? Can you ride wheelchairs on sidewalks? When you reach an intersection, do you have to stop and use the crosswalk, or do you go across? The rules aren't very clear here. This young man was on his way to school. How come this is not a safe route to school anymore? I think I want to support everything that's in the agenda report and suggest that it's not even going far enough. We have to invent better ways. We have to set some rules, let everyone know what they are through websites, through brochures, through education. We probably need licensing. I see every day bicycles and e-bikes with children riding on the handlebars, and I don't think that's safe. I don't think that's even legal. Perhaps I'm wrong. Am I wrong, Sheriff?
It's currently illegal in Encinitas.
It's currently illegal, but it's done anyway. How many people can ride on a bicycle?
1, 2 if it's equipped with a second seat.
With a second seat. Okay. And yet I've seen 3 riding on a bicycle. You know, 1 on the handlebars, 1 on the regular seat, and 1 on the back. So, the kids seem to think it's okay. They're obviously they must think they're invulnerable. We have to have rules. We have to teach them. We have to make sure that the drivers know what their rules are too, because this collision, and it's a collision, not an accident. I think we had an e-bike traveling to school. I don't know if he was crossing El Camino Real or using a Shero, and we had a fast moving vehicle, maybe traveling a little bit over the speed limit. Maybe the driver was not paying as much attention as could have been, and the two vehicles collided. I think it scratched the motor vehicle a bit and killed Brady. And we have to do something to fix this. So we never want this to happen again in Encinitas. I haven't given you many suggestions, but I think we'd want to have, ideally, the separate roadway for low-speed vehicles. We'd like to have speed limit signs for bicycles. We'd like to have a brochure and website that explains what the rules are to both the drivers and the pedestrians. And if the sheriff stops someone, hand him the brochure and explain what the rules are. And if we have licensing for the e-bikes and the riders, that might help, because there's a lot of teenage boys don't know their limits. They have to be taught. They have to learn, and you don't want to learn them into a grave. And that's all I can say.
Thank you for your thoughtful comments. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Wong?
Yes, I have a few words. Thank you. First of all, thanks, Abe. I know you and your staff have been working pretty hard to develop this map in just a few weeks. And thanks for letting us know that's still kind of an alpha version. It's not gelled yet, because I do have a few suggestions that come from my experience doing a lot of biking. I do have a car. I haven't driven it since about May, so I ride it a lot. So as for the allocation, I want to try and get the maximum bang for the buck. So that's one of the reasons why I was asking the sheriff about where accidents are. But I also think another factor is just perceptions of people who actually ride a bike, just how safe you feel, where you see accidents. I'd be happy to work with, I'd love to work with Mr. Buck, since he's our new mobility manager, and talk to him about this. So here's some comments about just maybe how we can reallocate some of the numbers. I know these numbers are not fixed in stone. You don't even have the money yet, but it's as much as my opinion. So starting with signage, it's only 20K, but in my opinion, signage doesn't really help very much because people notice it maybe the first week, but after that, it's not seen. Like speed limit signs, do people even see speed limit signs? Because if they do, they don't pay attention to them. Sharrows, they don't really do a lot for safety, I don't think. It's things that are also ignored quite often. Drivers hate them, bikes hate them. I certainly do. I don't feel safe on them. I never use them on 101. When there, I'll use the bikeway. Same thing with green paint. I don't think it really helps that much, unless there's a clear indication that maybe if you said the bikes have right of way where there's green paint. Otherwise, cars just don't care. Let me skip to street lights, since that's a fairly large item, 500K. I don't think that will really help either. I think that'd be better allocated elsewhere, because I don't think it's a visibility problem. Bike lights are cheap now, really bright. It's more a matter of drivers actually noticing the bikes. So I think that'd be better to spend that elsewhere. Infrastructure, like in intersections. So bike boxes, you only have 4 bike boxes on El Camino Real. I think you could use bike boxes anywhere there's a left turn lane. So El Camino has a lot of them, but so does Encinitas Boulevard, so does downtown Encinitas. So I'd rather see the 500K in streetlights, or whatever the number is, allocated to bike boxes. I guess bike boxes, you have 4 for 200K to 50K each, so 10, 500K would be 10 bike boxes. And I think that'd be, in the end, safer than streetlights. Class 2 bike lanes, of course, that'd be great. And so would Class 4, but you said post only, and I'm not sure how much Class 4 will be better over bike Class 2. If you have limited funds, I'd rather see those posts put at right turn lanes. You can't do USB call.
I know our IT team can, I cannot.
Okay, I just have
curious.
one figure. You probably already know about it, but I'm not sure everyone else does. It's for protected right turns. And this is a figure that comes right out of NATCO. So basically, if you have a post at the end of say there's a bike lane where there's a right turn, if you have a post there so that cars can't cut into the bike lane, even put a traffic wedge there like you have at Swami's, that would help the right hooks. And it make bikers feel a lot safer there, because just like in that video that was shown by one of our speakers, that was a right hook. So that's where I'd advise putting some of that money. Restriping and lane narrowing, that'd be great if it actually does lower speeds. I think that a few months ago, maybe a year ago, we were talking about, maybe Ray did it, narrowing the lanes in Manchester. But Manchester's not really that much of a problem because there aren't that many intersections except for the college. But the one where Brody has an accident, that section of El Camino Real, speed limit is 55 miles an hour, which is ridiculous, in my opinion. I know it's hard to change because it has an 85% thing, but maybe AB 43 will let you do that. But if you can narrow the bike lanes and that reduces speeds, then that would help. Again, I don't know whether people will actually reduce their speeds because they're used to going fast there and they feel like it's wide open. And so that'd be maybe an enforcement issue as well. But I think that would increase safety also. So, again, I do want to maximize the return for the dollar, since whenever we get their money, it's going to be limited. And so I want to put it where it really helps the most. Because as you well know, what counts as safety, not just safety, but perception of safety, because that is what will encourage people to mode shift, maybe get out of the car and ride a bike if they feel safe. And I suspect that's inhibiting a lot of people from doing it because they just don't feel safe. So if you can put these visible infrastructure changes that would make it look safer, feel safer, then I think it will help in both those, mode shift and the climate action plan. Okay, so I've gone on a lot about this, but thanks for your help, for your work. But I'd also like to ask you to revise this, and I'd be happy to help in any way I can. I'd love to work with Mr. Buck too, if we can do that. So
To make sure I heard it right, and for other commissioners, in case we want to make a motion later on, incorporating some aspects of your suggestion, the way I heard it, bike boxes are top priority, new bike lanes are top priority. After that, a little bit less importance is using posts.
Well, protected bike lanes, protected right turns.
Protected
I think
facilities.
someplace up there too. So I'm suggesting instead of the posts for converting class 2 into class 4, take some of the posts and put 4 or 5, however many you need at intersection. About 4 of them is all you need, one in each corner, to have a protected bike lane, right turn.
For right turns, correct.
I don't know whether everyone knows what a protected turn is, but I'm sure you do. The figure I have is straight out of NATCO, so NACTO, sorry.
We added, I think, one similar to the NACTO suggestion before the cycle track went in for northbound 101 before Chesterfield. Did something similar there. Average importance, green paints, sharrows, and then the lowest importance from what I heard from you, signage and lighting.
Correct.
If we wanted to create some sort of a
Priority,
tier
yes.
1, tier 2, tier 3 off of these maps. No, that's very good. That's very good recommendation. Exactly what I would like to hear from commission. So when I take it to council, I would say this was commission's idea. If you want to have some sort of a similar, again, I know you only had 3-4 days with this. If you want to have a similar suggestion on implementation of these projects, hey, out of the new bike lanes that you're suggesting on this map, these are the better bike lanes. Leave these ones for after if you have funding restrictions or something, or for bike boxes. I heard you mention El Camino, Encinitas Boulevard, and downtown. If you want to have some sort of a preliminary prioritization suggestion for us to incorporate, this would be the avenue. But these are all good information. I don't want you to worry about making the motion, because we do record this, and I'll make sure I incorporate all your comments into the, because again, this is not really an approval, this is more like a brainstorming session, considering the fact that, again, you don't have real designs in front of you. But yeah, we'll figure out, I guess, in the end, if we want to make it. I think the motion, I think it's fair to say, I usually don't do this, but I think it's fair to say the commission does support these improvements. I doubt the commission would say, don't do these. But yeah, if when it comes to the motion, we'll figure it out. But these are all good comments, so yeah, don't worry about having a long motion that everybody else understands. I'm taking notes, Amanda takes notes, and then we'll make sure we incorporate your suggestions when we take this to council.
Okay, thank you, Abe, especially for this opportunity to brainstorm with you, because this is ideal opportunity for it. The overriding is really that intersections are most important, as one of our speakers said. So I hope we make progress in that direction. Thanks very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner Wong. Other, Commissioner Thiele?
I do have some comments. Thank you very much. I couldn't agree more with Commissioner Gross. I think speed is the real issue here. And I'm sure that the sheriffs would agree. And I think, Abe, you mentioned it in our last meeting, and I think we were talking about AB 43 in terms of speed reduction, and I think even 40 to 35, just in terms of how people are injured, makes a big difference. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. Yeah, the national, there are different studies, but it's usually the 80-20. When you're at 40, usually 80% is fatality. When you come down to 25, it's reversed to 20% fatality versus 80% survival. It's usually that from 40 to 25, that's a very, very big difference.
Right. And in the corridor of El Camino Real, for example, since we're talking about 3 lanes or 4 lanes to 3 to 2, well, 3 mostly, the wide road really kind of exaggerates the speed, in particular from coming in north from Manchester up into, well, Encinitas or just before. Does that seem to be kind of a high-speed zone in your experience, Sheriff?
Not really. When I was a deputy on a motorcycle, I used to write a lot of tickets there, but they weren't extremely high. They were, by our standards. So 68, 70s you'll get occasionally, which it's fast for sure. But the line
That's really fast.
Right. But most of them were probably, right in the range of that we would actually write tickets for, were slightly above 65.
So I think my point is that we have bike lanes on that road. And if you're riding a bike, well, in this particular area, if you're going uphill, even on an e-bike, and a car is going, say, 50, the reaction time is decreased by a lot, really. And your bicycle, well, e-bike, I think the highest speed e-bike can go 30, maybe. So I think speed is the real issue. It depends on the road, obviously, but with the data that we're getting on El Camino Real, and then that's a major thoroughfare. Kids are riding on that to get to many of the different campuses. I think we should really consider deterrent, and one of those is a camera, and I think that would help you in your department as well, Sheriff. So I think we should really consider that on the commission and move that forward if we can. Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners have comments? Please.
To jump on the speed camera train, I would add my voice of agreement to my 2 colleagues that have spoken on the topic. Reducing speed is the obvious thing to do. So we should work to do it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. So I have a few comments, but I'll start with this one. So number 1, we can try to write a letter as a commission, which I know you have suggested before, and send it to council. We need to at least bring that back to this commission, so it wouldn't be until next month. But I would like to, I think that's something that we should do as a commission. Are there any commissioners that are interested in working on that letter?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so Commissioner Gross, Commissioner.
Yes, I'm very interested.
Commissioner Thiele.
Yeah,
How
of course,
many?
because I had a lot of suggestions. I think Abe actually has most of them. I don't know what we could add to what he already has.
Sorry, I'm, a separate issue. So what I'm suggesting is they would like to propose a letter for a speed camera to get our commission support.
okay.
I don't know if you understand. That's
I apologize.
okay.
I'm also in favor of speed cameras. I didn't get a chance to say
Thank
it.
you.
but-
Maybe I wasn't speaking into the mic clearly. But, so I think, just to reiterate, 2, so I am going to suggest that you two can be a subcommittee and work together to bring us a letter that will be on the agenda report. I will, Amanda, could you please email Commissioner Thiele and Commissioner Gross that draft letter that was done before? Okay, that would be great. So you two can work on that, and hopefully you can connect and bring that back to us. So we can see if we can get on that thing that's going through, I forgot the word for it now, that's going through current state. Can you help me?
AB 645.
Thank you. You both know, so that's
The only
great.
thing I'd say there, sorry, just to understand is, like, I want to make sure that I'm saying the city declared an emergency. You know, there's all sorts of potential ways that the city can perceive that, and I think this is our first meeting where we've been able to meet. And the only thing I would say is I don't want this action to be approved by us in lieu of us doing other work. I would much rather say this is not enough. We've declared a state of emergency. We need a different plan than potentially finding some money to do a couple bike lanes. So I don't know if that's still that process, but that's the only thing I was trying to address, which is I wouldn't want to, in my opinion, I wouldn't want to approve this, act like this is our response to the emergency plan, and then, you know, a couple of commissioners go off and work on a special project. I think I would ask as a council, we say, this is not good enough. We've declared a state of emergency. We need much different approaches to the challenge. So.
And I understand, and I guess another approach would be, we also suggest maybe that council fund more officers for enforcement, because it is my current understanding that putting in these types of speed cameras is against the law in California. So unless we get on this current piece of legislation, we can't have a speed camera. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're also saying another solution is having more enforcement. So maybe that is something we could also recommend here, is that instead of $500,000 going to put in lighting, we suggest that they hire 2 more traffic officers to enforce speeding, right? So I think that addresses one of your concern. I'm not sure how else to do it, but I think that we could ask for that to be added there. So I'm just going to go with my other comments, and then we can circle back to that in the end, if that's okay. So as a non-cyclist and a avid walker, runner, driver, I will also say that I'm not a fan of spending $500,000 on lighting. That would be my lowest hanging, like I would say that would be the least thing that I have for priority. I will say, as a driver who does not know bike lanes, I actually really like the green paint on the ground, and it helps me clarify where bikes are, where I should be, where a bike lane is. So I know that you guys are all cyclists and are really familiar with it, but as a non-cyclist and a parent of young drivers, I feel like green paint is not expensive and is really helpful. So I do like the green paint. I also think it is helpful to have signs on the ground, maybe not up top, but like as you're driving and it says Shero, it is a great reminder for me. It was a great reminder for my teenage kids when they were driving, that they knew that that was a Shero. And but I am in complete agreement with Commissioner Wong saying that I think most of the money, or a lot of the money, should go for bike boxes. We don't have any, and I think that would really promote safe turns. I also think we should add to this the right-hand turn bollards, like you were saying, on the green lanes. Anything to slow that right-hand turn. I am terrified that I am going to hit a cyclist, especially an cyclist, because when I'm in traffic and they are coming down, especially like Leucadia Boulevard, they get a lot more speed. They can come off side streets. I haven't seen them. I don't know they're there, and then I go to make a right turn. I'm watching traffic in front of me. I'm trying to look over my right shoulder. I'm turning into a driveway, and a cyclist comes right up. So I feel like there's so much more for drivers to work on for safety, that the green paint, those extra bollards, I think would be fabulous, because I'm trying as hard as I can, but I am afraid that I am going to be the person turning right into a cyclist, and it really, really worries me. So anyway, I think that is important. And then, the last thing is, I know that we do have some signs that say no right turn on red. And I know that you were saying that we are gonna get the delayed pedestrians. I just was wondering if I think that might have to be a city ordinance, though, to say at every signal, no right turn on red. Would that have to be, because I know it's state law, right? So I don't know if we could override that, or just maybe busier intersections, no right on red or something like that. Is that something you've considered?
I do have to double check the Municode. I think Municode does authorize city traffic engineer to do that. If that's the case, technically I don't need council approval. However, the fact that if we're doing something citywide like that, I'd rather take it to council to have proper public hearing process, because it does affect flow of traffic and adds intersection delay to a lot of, vehicles, obviously.
Yes, I completely understand. It could back up and cause other issues, but maybe there are some key intersections that could benefit from that. So,
Oh, that sure is a good suggestion. It can certainly be added to this list, no turn on red at intersections where we have a high volume of right turn and they're going over bicyclists.
okay, perfect. So I think the only thing I was disagreeing with Commissioner Wong on was the green paint and the signage on the road, just because being a non-cyclist, it is helpful for me. And all the young drivers out there, I think it is. And then, to circle back to, I don't know if it's possible to add to this list, but to add, this is rather a lot of money, $500,000 for lighting. I don't know what it costs to hire sheriff enforcement, but I don't know if it's $100,000 is a sheriff's salary per year, or if it's more than that. With the 500,000, could we get 3, added traffic patrol? I think that would be very valuable for our city. So I don't know if it could be a temporary, but we do have an emergency declaration. So that would be my other suggestion, is see if we could do that. I don't know if that's something you're allowed to
Yeah, my
suggest.
item was traffic improvements. I'm trying to kind of connect all these good suggestions. Nothing can prevent you from making a motion and adding something else on top of the report to it, like the whole camera idea or addition of sheriff recruitment efforts by funding that extra. Yeah, it's not really relevant to infrastructure improvement, but feel free to add it to the motion. I'll pass it to the council. Say, they approved this, but they also added these 3 non-infrastructure suggestions. Nobody can say, oh no, since it wasn't relevant to the commission report, you're not allowed to pass it to council. I'll do it. But yeah, technically it's not really,
Okay.
Addition of sheriff deputies is not relevant to the report at discussion. But yeah, again, how does it work with the, Brown Act and everything? I don't, just do it.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just looking, the subject does say potential safety enhancement options for local emergency for bicycle, e-bike, and motorized mobility device safety. So
Yeah, again, I'm not gonna,
Okay.
I'm not gonna complain.
okay,
Yeah. It does help with the whole letter writing process. It would save that. You can just add the idea about addition of cameras or getting on the AB 645. So
okay,
Yeah.
great, then let's do that, because
if
that
the
will get
attorney,
to.
if the attorney says you were not supposed to do, we'll see. I don't
Okay.
think so. Yeah.
Okay, so, any other commissioners have comments?
Thing I was going to say on the lighting. So, Abe, do you have any data on the, I don't have it on top of the head, but I do know there's some pretty interesting data on low lighting areas and the number of vehicle, deaths in those areas. So I wasn't sure if your staff was going off of that and thinking about lighting, because it is a major issue. Low lighting is a major issue in vehicle deaths.
It was brought up to make sure we're kind of connecting these projects to our collision history and the collision heat maps of the city. This is partly, as I mentioned earlier, based on our local roadway safety map, which was a systemic evaluation of all the collisions happened in the city, all the risk factors, and that LRSP study did come up with countermeasures and potential safety improvement projects. So some of these lightings are coming out of that LRSP that were related to, okay, these are the heat maps of the collision history of the city, and some of them obviously were because of low lighting, and it kind of generated some of the projects. So there is a good correlation between the projects that you see here and our collision history, because some of these projects are coming off of that document.
Okay, well, then I'm sorry if I don't have that data. I mean, I didn't know that, so if you feel they're more important, you know, of course, you can voice your priority on that. I did just want to address one more thing. When you're talking about where these projects are, I did notice that there were no improvements along Vulcan and La Costa Avenue. Am I correct on that? That there were none of these improvements? I guess there is La Costa right as we're going over the bridge to, there is right there on that stretch of La Costa, there's some improvement right there. And I guess the other part is Carlsbad, I think is where it splits maybe. But there are none of these improvements are listed for North Vulcan, right?
Oh,
I mean,
ashamed, but Vulcan is one of those where the feasibility really kills any, like there's
nothing you
there's
can
no
do.
room, like it's
I know.
21 feet wide, 22 feet wide. There's really, I mean,
Okay.
other than, putting shadows, which we did already, and we
Okay.
did traffic calming there, added a few speed tables.
Yes, and and I do appreciate that. I just wanted to just check in that was the reason it was left off, because I wanted to just hear you say that it just wasn't feasible, and we've done everything we can there. So, okay.
You wanted to see my ashamed face.
I did not. I wanted to hear it with my own ears that was the reason that it wasn't there.
Yeah,
So-
unfortunately, that's the situation. I mean, it has all. I mean, we know we have drainage issue there. The road has to be rebuilt. We do have, fortunately, the right of way. It's just rebuilding a whole new road. It's
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's the same reason that one section of Saxony is left off, that you just don't have the width of the road through there.
Well, for Saxony on between Encinitas and Lucadia, we do have the
Yes, but the other side.
Correct.
Of Lucadia Boulevard.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify in case anybody was at home looking at this map and wondering why their street was left off, because people have talked about those stretches for quite a while. But-
Yeah, one I guess condition that we set for ourselves when looking for projects, doing a sweep of the city, was that we do not want to. We know it's almost impossible to come up with like $20 million, $50 million. We have our own, infrastructure task force that is looking into major improvements citywide. For this specific one, we were looking for the projects that we thought would be feasible in shortest amount of time.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, is somebody going to make a motion? It's me again? Okay, you going to try it?
No, I was wondering, what does this require a motion, or?
Well, I think if we want to add those two things to it, the two additional suggestions we had, which were
Speed cameras and the sheriff?
speed cameras, sheriff, and maybe funding for a sheriff so let me say this clearly. We would like to add funding for, 2 additional traffic sheriffs. I don't know what that amount is. Is that, how do we say it?
Well, it'd be probably motorcycle deputies would probably be ideal for more tickets.
Perfect.
And then, did you want the rough estimate on what's?
Yes, that would be great.
A rough estimate, not set in stone, is about 220
For 2.
for each.
For each, 220 for each. Okay.
That's for 1 year, correct? So we're talking about a temporary 1 year.
Correct.
Okay, that would be my objection, is that, with all due respect to our sheriff, because
We're
you are the
expensive.
ones who keep our city safe, and you've done a marvelous job, but I'd love it if you could do that for more than 1 year. So,
Well, I guess the question is, everybody was saying we need to reduce speeds. How else do you reduce speeds? It's either I mean, all this is a suggestion, and they can discuss it. We're just saying, in order to reduce speeds, we need either more, I keep losing it, motorcycle patrol, what is the word you say?
Motorcycle deputies?
Motorcycle deputies, right? That's the only way to ticket, or we get on the traffic cameras, but first we have to get, as to be one of those pilot cities, added to that state bill.
I have a suggestion, Chair.
Yes.
Since it's too early, let's not talk about dollars and cents. Just make it a motion to suggest council consider this. Maybe they want to add 4.
Right.
So,
okay.
Just add it to the motion. I do like to receive some sort of a green light for the projects. If you want to drop a project, I mean, again, just example, like Ranch Santa Fe came up, well, we talked about it before council decided to shelf it. We don't want to even present. So something like that. If there is something in there you don't like to see. And some sort of prioritization, I like that tier idea because it can kind of merge a few of them together. It doesn't need like absolute 100% consensus among the commissioner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you like this, I think everybody, from what I heard, black boxes and new bike lanes, they're most preferred. Then we have green paint and addition of posts. And then sharrows, signage, and streetlights are last. Is that something everybody kind of can agree on?
Yes, and then what about the restriping and narrowing? Are we saying note or shelf that, or?
Well, the restriping and narrowing is kind of that bike lane and buffer.
Okay,
The
okay.
new bike, yeah, it's the first category. I think the lane narrowing and buffers and bike lanes.
Okay.
They are.
Okay, good. I just didn't know where that was fitting in the
Yeah, new
list.
bike lane and buffer and boxes, those are all striping modification, I guess, so that can be first category. Second category would be green paint and posts. And then the third one would be sharrows, signage, and streetlights. So if commission wants to support the proposal as is with this preliminary prioritization criteria, and if you want to add or remove something from there, then you can add the 2 comments about on top of these, or the way Commissioner Gross suggested, before even considering these, we think we have to consider these other 2 addition of enforcement efforts and inclusion of cameras in the city before this even gets started. I mean, that piece of it, however you want to.
Did you have protected lanes in there, protected turns?
Protected right turn lanes.
What
with-
about
In
I think
the,
that would
it's a
be some-
second category, yeah, the second tier where utilization of posts for creating protected areas.
all right, sorry.
Okay.
Anyway, Chair, I support everything. I think we should give council as many tools in toolbox as possible and let them choose. I don't think those fund all of them, but let them choose. If we do as the traffic engineer suggested, give some priorities or preferences, that would help.
Great, I like that. Is this your motion?
Yes, if if that qualifies for one.
So you're moving to to approve all of these with Abe's priority tiered list.
Correct, with the addition of looking into speed cameras,
Yeah,
additional sheriff staff.
I guess what we want to say is we approve all of these with, however, we feel that reducing speeds is the most important,
Correct.
important priority. And we think that additional sheriff staff and the camera thing is, okay, James, take over.
The commission is saying that we believe that reducing speed and distracted driving are the 2 most critical issues facing the city. Before we look at these improvements, we believe we should prioritize speed in traffic cameras and police enforcement around that. And then we should look at these other things.
And that's our motion. And I'm not restating it.
We'll leave that to Amanda.
It's recorded. Thank you, Amanda. Okay,
I'll second that motion, whatever it was.
okay.
It's on record.
Wong. Commissioner Wong. And we're going to go with gross, well, who's seconding it?
I think he just seconded
Oh.
it, so I think
Yeah,
I
I
made
thought-
you
it.
can't
I thought-
second your,
I think
I thought-
oh, you made the motion
I
and
made the
he
motion
seconded.
and.
Whatever.
seconded.
Okay. Gross made it. It's always exciting here at the Traffic Commission. Okay, so. Okay. So on the floor, so are we voting?
Motion to adjourn is what I said. Oh.
Motion to approve agenda item 7C with the additional comments.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
I'll fix that.
Okay, that it says motion to adjourn, but we can just go ahead and vote. But it's
The
still,
funding for 2, I thought we're removing it.
Yeah, not to.
Consider additional funding for additional motorcycle deputies.
Yeah.
are you, and you're going to go back in and edit that for us? Okay, thank you. Somebody hasn't voted. There we go. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Next, we're on to 7A. We're going backwards in time. So here we go.
Yes.
South Highway 101 Engineering and Traffic Survey. Do we have any public comment on this?
We have two. We have Scott Campbell, followed by Christine Schindler.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, I wish I could talk as long. Based on some of the things that I heard, I strongly suggest that some of you enroll in the Encinitas Academy, and you'll learn a lot of answers. First thing, I got to question some of the analysis here, particularly the east side of this 101. It says high pedestrian and lack of pedestrian facilities. First off, has there ever been a pedestrian on the east side of 101? Ever? I don't think so. Lack of pedestrian. There is that fancy thing called the rail trail. Yes, the rail trail. That's right there. How are pedestrians actually accessing the east side of 101? From Swami's or from Chesterfield? They're just not there. So this is kind of bogus. We're talking about the speed cameras. I think we should enforce license plate laws. Half the cars in this town don't have front license plates. They're gonna not get caught. We want to reduce the speed from 40 to 35. What is the amount of expected reduction in accidents? It says on this chart there's been 5 per year for the last 5 years. That's 5 out of 6 million vehicles per year. How much? We can't reduce much more than that. That probability is like infinitesimal. We can't reduce it much more. Safety comes at a cost, and it's not linear. That last marginal piece of safety comes at an extremely high, infinite cost. We're approaching that right now. Have the sheriffs, have we budgeted resources? I know you just asked for 2 staffs. We only have 4 patrol cars in the city right now. At one time, 4. If we're gonna have cars taking speed traps, that's basically what this is, to reduce it to 35 so it's not a speed trap. What area is not gonna be enforced? El Camino? I mean, you gotta give somewhere. Now let's go to these charts. According to the chart here, it says that our accident rate is 0.76 and the state rate is 1.46. We're 52% less already. It's already a pretty safe street. Let's take the time to travel that 1 point something miles. It's a 12.5% reduction. That adds up to like 16.8 seconds. Multiply that by 20,700 cars. It's 10,000. That's, and then $15 an hour, which is cheap. Most of those cars make a lot more than that. That's $10,000 a day per year. we can afford to pay all the wrongful deaths with this. I mean, just think about this. Do we really need to do this? Pardon me, I'm going to go over time. If the new cycle track was not here, would this be an issue? Ask yourselves that. Would this still be on the agenda if the cycle track was not built? It was 2 months ago, and we're already making changes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. Oh, one more speaker. I apologize.
No, that's fine. I actually didn't indicate that I wanted to speak, but I think I will now. So Christine Schindler, East Encinitas. I think any opportunity where we can bring down speeds is important. So I wrote in ahead of time and said I supported this. I think 5 mile an hour matters, particularly with the restriping on this particular section of roadway. We have a narrower bike lane, so there's less separation going north. And I think lowering speeds as much as we can around town is going to help. Not everybody obeys speed limits, but it is a way to take some action. So I support this, and a lot of what the previous speaker said, I just really don't understand where he's coming from. And Coast Highway has a lot of traffic. However, I don't think there's a lot of congestion, and I don't think this lowering of the speed limit is going to create any problems as far as that goes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Now that was our last speaker. On to you.
Sure, yes. Hopefully a quick item. I know we had a long night already and we have a few new guests. Don't want them to feel like we have 4-hour meetings every time. This is an anomaly. Usually our meetings are less than 4 hours, 3.5 hours. Yes, as was mentioned, we recently implemented cycle track south of Swami's, between Chesterfield and Swami's. A lot of lane narrowings, a lot of new elements were added to the roadway. We did anticipate we'll be able to get lower speeds with this modification. That's always been a direction of Commission and Council to lower speed citywide. And we did a survey, obviously followed the standard practice of the state, the authorities that we have to lower an additional 5 mile per hour after identifying the 85th percentile. And then the 85th came back at 42, rounded to 40, and then we're allowed to make it 35 because of different considerations like the volume of bicycle activity that we have there, pedestrian activity, all these other elements of design that we have on the corridor. And our proposal is a 35 mile per hour speed limit. After this, it will go to council. If adopted by council, we'll sign the stamp and post it and send a copy to Sheriff's Office for enforcement. That should be said that again, when AB 43 kicks in, we'll be able to drop it an extra 5 miles. It's safe to assume 101 would be the first corridor that council would like to utilize their safety corridor option. They're allowed to utilize that on 20% of the roads of the city, and it's safe to assume 101 will be one of those. So pretty much all the segments of 101 will see another 5 mile reduction starting July 1st, 24.
Thank you for the presentation. Any comments?
Well, yes, I'm all in favor of speed reduction because we all know it's safety. So I don't want to be too premature, but I move to approve this.
I second.
What? Can we discuss more?
Definitely. After we second, I can now say, are there any comments, questions?
Yeah, I'm in favor of it. I think the speeds throughout Encinitas, except on the freeway, should be 35 or less, with 25 or less in residential areas. One of the benefits of going down to 35 all over town is that makes street legal golf carts a viable way of getting mobility. They're limited by state law to 35 miles an hour. So that it reinforces it.
That's a great point. Thank you for your comments. Any other commissioners?
Abe, I love this data point on one of the speakers brought up, which is the accidents to MVM or million vehicle miles. Do we have this for the entire city of Encinitas?
There was I believe, a study conducted a few years ago on a state level that we got the information. I don't think it's something that's done every year. Yeah, I did some research last year to see if I can find new data for that, but unfortunately, it's kind of getting obsolete. I keep using it, but at some point, I got to stop using it because I think it's from.
Yeah, it's a cool day. I mean, I would just, do you have any ideas on, I mean, basically, it's saying the street is almost, I mean, the coast highway right there is, half as dangerous as the average California state line.
Similar, because this comes from the California state, what's CMS, the California road system? I think it's CRS. There is a California road system, basically, that governs which roads at a city we have to survey to be able to enforce, otherwise it's speed trap. It's not my decision. We go to that state map, and there are some roads. If you recall, 2 years ago, we were talking about declassifying Vulcan because Vulcan is on that map to be able to use a 25 prima facie residential. So this is based on that. So classifications on that California roads map or road system that are the same classification as 101, which is fair because a lot of those roads are kind of rural, suburban roads that are faster. Yeah, for our road, it's the slower road. And
cool. Well, just cool data point that, especially that we're that much better. And then just to second what Commissioner Johnson said, increasingly it looks like the mapping companies, Apple Maps, Google Maps, they have talked about adding LSV to their mapping systems. That's low-speed vehicle lanes, like for golf carts. And imagine Encinitas, the way it would light up as this coast highway comes eligible for that under 35. So that's really cool, and hopefully other cities follow suit so that kind of mapping, or maybe we could, just like we have walking and biking, we could have LSV style mapping, which would be a great way to get around town. Of course, any street lower than 35 miles per hour, I feel a lot safer sending my children on than other streets. So it's cool.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, well, so shall we vote on this agenda item? Okay, motion passes unanimously. And now we are on to, I think, item 8, the city traffic engineer report of A is safety and mobility project updates.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as our standard practice, I'm open to questions on any of these projects.
Okay, thank you, and I'm just going to open this up for everybody. Anybody have any questions, comments? If you click on the document, we can blow it up if you need to see it. I have a few. I'll begin since nobody else is going. The street lights, I'm really interested. Can you please remind me? I know I ask this every time, and you think I would write it down, and I thought I did, but I was communicating with family members today, and I just want to be sure. At Leucadia Boulevard and Orpheus, that light is getting upgraded, and are you putting in a dedicated left-hand turn light there?
You mean the traffic signals? Okay.
Yeah, sorry,
both
traffic
lighting
signals.
and,
Lighting, I'm sorry, the street lighting improvements that you wrote the grant for.
Vulcan and Leucadia is getting protected lefts, yes. Is that what-
Orpheus, by the Starbucks, Orpheus, the Starbucks, is that getting?
No, that I don't think that's our signal. That's Caltrans, I think. Is it ours?
It is, I'm pretty sure it's ours. I mean, I don't know, but.
Well, that's not on the grant. I'll update on that. No, the 4 intersections that are getting protected lefts is Vulcan at Encinitas, Vulcan at Leucadia, the hospital at Santa Fe signal, and then Leucadia at Quail. These are the 4 that are getting protected lifts.
Okay. There was another accident today at Lucadia and Orpheus, auto
Hey, let me
collision.
double check. I have a strong feeling it's a Caltrans signal, but I'll double check.
Okay, well, I guess I'll let you look that up, and I would love to connect later, but if it is a Caltrans signal, how do we get it protected? Because it needs to be protected. There are so many accidents at that intersection, and I thought that you said that we were getting the pedestrian, I'm pretty sure I emailed you, that it was gonna get also the pedestrian pause thing. So the light was gonna turn, and it was gonna let pedestrians, because that, again, is very dangerous. There are so many people crossing to get back and forth to that Starbucks, and there's that left-hand turn. So, I don't mean to
Yeah,
stump you.
I just got confirmation. It belongs to Caltrans. That signal is Caltrans.
Really? Because there's one before. How is that Caltrans? It feels like it's.
Caltrans has 2 there. They have their own on and off ramp, and they have this one similar to Saxony. They have 2 there. They have the on and off ramp on Encinitas Boulevard, and they have the Saxony. When there is very close proximity between 2 back-to-back signals that would affect their on and off ramp, they own the next one too.
Okay,
Like
so.
on the west, we own the Lazy Acre, and they only own the on and off ramp. But on the east, they own both
Okay.
the on and off ramp and Saxony. We only have Calumet.
So nothing is going to happen to the signal at Lucadia and Orpheus. There's
We
not
have
even going to be.
communicated with them multiple times about this. They have their own evaluation prioritization process. I can reiterate this concern. Maybe we get something from council to kind of make it stronger a little bit.
Okay, because I think we also need the pedestrian lag thing where you push that and it lets pedestrians go, because we have lots of e-bike traffic there too, and bikes and walking and baby strollers, and that is such a high, it's a really impacted corner because of the Starbucks and the businesses there. And maybe next time, I'll just pull the data for our next meeting and just see how many accidents are there, and maybe we can circle back and see how we can get that intersection improved. So thank you, that was mine. And it says fall 2023 for these going in. Are the signals, the other 4, are they on their way?
Correct. They are all, that one and the Z crossing on El Camino, they're all on their way. Once they get shipped, we should be able to start construction in a month. So I anticipate all of these completed before the end of the year.
Okay. Fabulous. And then I guess what is the difference between the first line item and the second line item?
Oh, the second one is just lighting, the actual lights. We are converting, we had 720,000 from Caltrans to upgrade high collision locations, corridors of the city, from old low-pressure sodium, high-pressure sodium to LEDs, which is currently underway. A good 80-90% of the lights on the contract have already been replaced. I'm not sure if it's that visible. We try to kind of keep the lighting a little bit, they're a little brighter than what they were, but we try to kind of keep it on the lower brightness level. But they are upgraded to LEDs. They have a lot better light distribution, minimal impact to the residences behind them, kind of only brightening up the roadway and the sidewalk where they are. So there are some additional benefits to these lights.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? No. Okay.
All right.
On to 8B. Did you have a question?
Well, sorry, and the gentleman had just left, but I did notice, maybe it's Commissioner Corners, but the LPI on Encinitas and Vulcan, he basically talked about how he almost got run over. I was curious if he had the LPI there, because I did notice today, actually, that
We have it.
when the light went green, though, it wasn't on. It was actually, it stayed red too, just randomly. So I was going north, I was going from north to south on Vulcan tonight to come here. And when I crossed Encinitas Boulevard, the green, I just went, and actually, when the light was green, the hand was still up, actually, which is even
Was
weirder.
off?
It was off. Which again, that's where I wanted to ask him. I didn't get a chance to ask him, but
You press the button?
no, I was on a bike. But it usually auto triggers.
No, some of them are, they need to receive a call. I think we only have recall in downtown.
So all these LPIs don't work without the trigger? If it's
We can't program them that way. But the problem is, the recall, if you put them on recall, it automatically serves the pedestrian. A lot of time, the pedestrian being served means it sits on red for the amount of time needed for that pedestrian, which with the LPI, it's a few seconds even longer.
Yeah, right. That makes
And
sense.
then it affects the intersection operation.
Yeah.
But again, this kind of circles back to Commissioner Wong's request to get the bike loops, because if a bike loop then, but I mean, that would be if a bike loop was triggering the,
The bike loop wouldn't trigger that.
No,
It would
I'm
have other
sorry.
benefits to it
Yeah.
that would kind of extend the minimum green a little bit. And we have some issues in some intersections where the biker cannot clear the intersection with our minimum green.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just 4 seconds, 6 seconds, which is not enough. But that also we're planning on addressing with the LPI project, because that gave us basically the funding to upgrade all of our intersections to like a Cadillac version intersection. We asked for a lot of money and we were granted, so we're upgrading our controllers, our loops, yeah, everything we can, so
Okay.
that should address that too.
okay, add that. Are you going to add that to this follow-up? Or is
I
it on
think
there?
it's already there, isn't it?
Lead pedestrian intervals, yeah,
Yeah,
it
that
is.
actually
Okay.
segues perfectly to ask you about number 60, which is signal timing for bikes.
So as a part of the LPI project, the consultant is supposed to create new signal timing plans for us because that's a mandate from Caltrans. They're giving us the money to implement. We need new timing plan. With the new timing plan, our plan is to ask them to do like an overhaul of the signal timing citywide and incorporate our evaluations for our bicycles being able to clear intersections. So that would be incorporated when they create the new timing plans for the LPI for us, which I would say be about middle of next year.
So June 24, kind of?
Yeah, that should be
So,
fair.
right now it says standing, so it might be June 24, okay.
Yeah, the consultant, we hired them. They're working on design right now for each of those, I want to say 48 intersections. 50 something. Yeah, I don't know the exact number. It's somewhere, because some of our intersections we already upgraded to new controllers, the 2070 controllers. All the other intersections will be upgraded to new controllers that would give us the LPI opportunity. And then they will redesign the intersections, the ones that are missing crosswalks, missing ramps, missing loops. All those are in there. And at the end, we will do a new timing so to have like a fresh timed intersection. So all of that is incorporated into
That all sounds excellent. Do you think you can update the spreadsheet so it has a date once you get an idea what the date would be?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. That also segues, if I may, Chair, into the two other items I have in here, which are the bike loop detection signage, which are the figure, I think, MUTCD 9C-7, and also the report on the Paul Ecke School, both of which have August 2023 as a projected completion date.
Yes, so as for the bike pavement legends and signage, we'll probably tackle that also with the LPI project. It's kind of the same nature, and we didn't really have a set aside funding for it. Even this year, we don't have funding for it, but we can probably tackle that with the LPI project. The fact that it's at signal at intersections. For Paul Ecke, we did have several meetings with Councilmember Henze and the school principal, and a task force that was created at the school liaison committee meeting. Different options are underway. One that most probably will be implemented pretty soon after some conversations between this task force and the Bike Walk Encinitas and the parents at PTA and at the school open houses. There are going to be outreaches to parents. Obviously, something that Nick, our mobility manager, will be able to help us with to convey the message is the whole Drive to 5 idea to identify and show them locations that parents can use to drop off kids, and then they would walk to school or bike to school or utilize other modes of transportation to get to school. That Drive to 5 map can be created. There is this other idea about partial closure around the school, creating a closure at Sirius, what's the other one? Sirius and
Union?
blacked out.
No, Hymettus.
Hymettus. It's Sirius and, is it Hymettus? No, Hygeia.
Hygeia, sorry, okay.
To have parking on Hygeia, but no, the closure would be on no.
Is up
What's
by
the right by
park.
the school? What's,
It's
is it Hygeia? No,
Hermes?
Hygeia. No, the one right by the school. Hermes. So to have a partial closure on Hermes and Sirius, and then encourage parents to drop off along Hygeia and Orpheus by the park to create some opportunities for them, like short-term pickup drop-off periods, so kids can walk to school. And then for the ones who bike to school, they're a lot safer that there are no cars on Sirius and Hermes during pickup drop-off. That's not yet a done deal. It's still in evaluation. There's, again, going to be conversations with parents. There has been outreach started by Councilmember and by Judy, communicating with the residents what potentially the idea is. So that's still in the works. So there are a bunch of different things happening on Pollocky front. We were planning on starting it sooner, but with the bike emergency, we decided to kind of slow that down and maybe look at it for implementation maybe in winter, from what I heard from Councilmember Hensy and the task force members. If you want to add anything, James, our commissioner, is also a member of that.
No, that's perfect. The only thing I'd add is, as of today, Councilwoman Hines secured some message boards for around the school. So some of the message boards you've seen out in different parts of Encinitas, like phones down, eyes up, are going to go in by the school as well.
Yes, we did install them last Friday, I think.
By the school?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So we had 10 originally funded by council that went around town, only focused on slowing down and bike safety and everything. An additional 10 we added by the schools last Friday, by the 10 schools of the city.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm glad to hear that our crack team's working on it.
Okay, great. Any other commissioners have questions or comments about this document?
Just on the roundabout, so, one thing is just on maybe the messaging where we say protecting the light poles. I think we're actually protecting the pedestrians. To hit the light pole, you would have had to hit the pedestrians first. So I think we probably should update that as well. And I know it was on Sheriff's report from June, but I think there's been 2 more, collisions with vehicles hitting, I think they knocked over the the Hymettus street pole, and they knocked over the one-way sign as well, since this went in. So, we're kind of averaging a collision a month at that roundabout, seems like.
We need a camera.
I mean, maybe question for you, Sheriff. Do you catch when they knock over like that Hymettus? I know, well, there was a very serious collision of a car hitting a parked car on Hymettus that would have gone through the house if it didn't hit the car. And I know that was a hit and run, but like, do people stop when they knock over the street sign? Like, I realize that's a pretty anecdotal question to ask, but.
Typically, we find them, if it is a hit and run, we find them a lot of the time, to be honest. Lately, we have been, seems like. But yeah, most of the time they're drunk, so.
Yeah. Did you happen to find the person that hit the car on Hymettus, that high-speed collision?
I don't recall. I've read a lot of reports lately, so I'd have to look into it.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there's any more questions on this. I had a quick question. Usually after this, you also have the chart that has the development project review, and it just was not here.
This month we're missing it.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. But
You
just,
find my holes in my presentation tonight.
to be honest, I have a
No, I'm
template that I
kidding.
work
That was
off
my
of,
fault.
and it just, I'm like, hey, what happened to that? So, but it'll be here next month?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah. We had one of our staff on vacation, and we forgot to ask him before he leaves on vacation, so he wasn't around.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, well, I think we're now to number 9, Commissioner Corner. Any commissioners? I think lots of quiet. Did you have something, Commissioner Gross? I think it's you.
Okay, so one thing I know in my neighborhood has come up a lot has been around trying to get speed humps on residential streets. Part of this is coming out of the high-speed collision on Hymettus. And a couple of residents just spoke about the sort of lack of transparency around the petition that you put in to then get speed humps. And I'm actually glad to see Fire here today because a lot of it revolved around what seems like effectively a Fire has a veto over putting in speed humps, even if you collect signatures, put it in front. Like you don't even get to the point where the rest of the neighborhood can vote against it. So a couple concerned residents asked me to just bring this up as an issue. What can we do to work more with Fire and the fire department to get speed humps in? Clearly, we don't want to increase EMS times or anything like that, but we do know that reducing speeds on a lot of these roads that where I live in Leucadia, there's no streetlights, there's no sidewalks, it's just a big open road, and of course there's a lot of kids on these roads, and there's a lot of collisions on these roads. So one question is just what can we do to Fire? There's a lot of cities now are putting in speed humps. There's reports out now that fire safety times are not impacted by speed humps. Again, that's again, just one research paper that I don't have with me today. But just curious what I can go back to the residents with on why Fire is vetoing these roads, and what can we do to change that?
Thank you, Commission. And just to reiterate what was said earlier, apologize I wasn't sitting at my post with my sign. I didn't know I was important enough to have a sign or a seat. So that's my excuse for not sitting up here. So to answer your question, there is criteria that has to be met, that is evaluated. We work with traffic pretty closely when it comes to this stuff. If something comes up, or if there's a concern, or if certain streets are asking about that, then they come to us and we evaluate it. There is, to list the criteria, it's basically, like you said, response times, and a lot of that comes from Northcom. There are options to that, to those speed humps. If they're the split, I think they're cushions if they're rubber. I know there's like 4 different types, so there are options to that, but it is evaluated with the fire chief and the fire marshal. The other criteria that we use to evaluate is if it's in high fire area, like one of the ladies mentioned today about having speed humps or bumps on Rancho Santa Fe, and that is a designated evacuation route. So we obviously don't want to slow down anything in those areas. Those roads also have requirements for width. So those are some of the things, but we would not be opposed to working with the commission or traffic and finding options to explore so that we can meet the intent to try to, solve some of the traffic issues, but not slow down emergency response. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and I think however we can work. And then are you always in this meeting moving forward, or just this week, or?
We received a request to be part of these meetings. I think we committed to quarterly, but we're going to try to come as much as possible. We are short-staffed right now, so it's the fire marshal, who's the fire marshal for 3 cities, and then me and one other. But we'll try our best to come to these, but at least quarterly.
I just want to thank Gabe for making that happen. I know the rest of that.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry, I did not catch your name.
Oh, I apologize. My name is Jordan Villagomez. I'm the Senior Deputy Fire Marshal.
Okay, great. And then I'm going to just kind of follow up here with Commissioner Gross's question. Specifically, there is a street, it's Eolus, and I know that, I think, hopefully you're familiar with it. These neighbors have put in multiple requests for any sort of mitigation of traffic. There's a long stretch where speeds get really high, and I know that Abe has worked diligently to get some approved traffic slowing measures. Now I think we're back to stop signs in some locations instead of roundabouts. But anyway, if speed bumps or speed humps can't be there, what could you guys suggest for these neighborhoods? I realize, I think it was vetoed because that canyon is a high fire. It says it's like a high fire zone. But I think some of the neighbors were just so disappointed because, I mean, literally right outside of the Orpheus Fire Department, there's speed humps. So could those, like similar to those, be placed on Eolus? Like, is there a modification or something that could be, that you guys could suggest that would help slow traffic and be acceptable for the fire department?
I don't know if we'd be in the business of suggesting a certain type, but we more evaluate it. But I know the ones on Orpheus, I think, are the split kind, if I'm not mistaken. So that allows us to go through without having anything impede the vehicle. But like I said, we're definitely open to options in certain areas. I would imagine that one didn't go through because it was in a high fire area, because that is one of the hey, we don't want to slow down evacuation times or inhibit emergency response to those areas.
Yes, definitely. So the type that are over by the fire department, the split ones, could those be implemented along Eolus? That type could be implemented because it allows you to split. Would that be acceptable if it's a high fire danger, or is that never acceptable in the high fire danger? I'm not trying to pin you down. I'm just saying maybe sometimes yes, it could, or never.
I actually don't have an answer for that. It's a good question. I think it would depend on the design, the widths, all of that, the angle. So we can definitely look into it to see if it's an option. I'm not sure exactly where that ranks in I guess, acceptability in that area. But we can definitely look into it to see if that's an option.
That would be great. How do we make that happen?
I can work with Abe, or if someone wants to send me some information, my email, then we can do it that way too.
Okay, thank you. Abe, I think you have the.
Oh, yeah, we have a petition for Eolus. About a few months ago, I think our fire marshal had a review on it, and what was the system that you mentioned? The one that you guys use for response time? You kind of mentioned it when you.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the name, but it's through Northcom.
Yeah. So they talk with the battalion chiefs and the captains. They okay, is this something that we're willing to kind of compromise on or not? But there is a map that it has like this long abbreviation, very severe fire hazards of VSHZZ. It's like a very six letter. If a roadway is on that map, usually it's the collective opinion of fire department of no matter what the design is of that cushion. If it's a cushion, if it's a bump, if it's a hump, it doesn't matter. Usually if it's on that map for various reasons, obviously the most important one being evacuations, fire department does not like to see cushions there. We had I think one exception in my 5 years here, but that was about it.
And just to reiterate and put some more information to that, Northcom is the dispatch center for the North County, and they have the roads identified, which can be condition, traffic, travel time, because their whole deal is they're going to get the closest unit to that incident in the time it needs to be. So that's another evaluation process.
Yes, okay, thank you. I think it was the email that went back to the neighbors said that because of the high fire danger, that it wasn't allowed. But again, like I said, the neighbors are like, well, right there at the fire station, there's speed bumps, and isn't that always inhibiting their progress no matter where they're going? So I would just greatly appreciate it if you could just check into it one more time and see if there was an acceptable design. I realize we keep asking the same questions, but I guess we're hoping for a different outcome here. But just now that I have you here, I feel like I need to just ask you in person and see if there is something you could come up with.
No problem. We can definitely check it out.
Okay, much appreciated. Thank you. Okay. Any other commissioners with Commissioner Corner? No. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. May I please have a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.